Chat, what's going on? What's going on, chat? We back with another live stream. How y'all doing today, man? How y'all doing? Back with another live stream. We're finna get into this trap more Ross and this little Dirk situation. So let's see what's going on, chat. Let's see what's going on. Hold on for just a second. Shout out Trap More Ross for the content. Shout out Trap More Ross. I'll go pull up on him for the Dirk content. He got all the Dirt content on his page, as y'all can see. Trap More Ross. Shout out to Trap for the content, man. Let's get into it, man. GS3 to Don. Like, comment, subscribe, and we're going to keep good vibes, mud. And you know the slogan. At the end of the day gotta end, mud.
Oh my God.
Oh, and I'm here to give you some news that you can use. I don't want you to abuse. Free Lil Durk is the news.
Gosh, I cannot believe what I've seen today. This is going to be a long video, people, okay? Strap in, get ready, all right? It's going to be absolutely wild. I'm going to tell you everything that went down from OTF Jam's testimony day 2, and what you're not ready for, people, is... it was a back and forth, okay? This video, I'm going to break down all of my notes. This is the closest thing you're going to get to the transcript before the transcripts come out, okay? Shout out to all of the people that be going through the transcripts. I'm hearing the transcripts are popping off, all right? They're coming out in the early hours after the sessions. I'm hitting you with my handwritten notes. I have calluses on my fingers. My thumb is literally swollen. You can't see it, but my thumb is literally swollen. It hurt. I'm in pain, okay? I'm getting one of those little lumps on the side of this finger. I don't know if you can see it. I'm not trying to swear at you guys. I'm not trying to do GDK either, but I'm literally, bro, I feel like I'm in school again, okay? I'm trying my hardest to write down literally everything that was said, and I'm going to get to it. Now, before I get into it, I want to make it clear, okay? Everybody's been hating, saying you're wrong, you be lying, you be infactual. I'm just going to give you the best notes that I could possibly take. Not everything's going to be perfect. Some things are going to be wrong. There were some things that I wrote down that then were contradicted later on. I don't know if the person was lying or if I wrote it down wrong. It is what it is, okay? I'm just going to tell you what I thought I heard in the courtroom. If anything's wrong, I apologize. But I'm going to do my best to be accurate. If anything's wrong, I'll correct the record, all right? Just let me know. It's cool. It's okay, all right? We don't need to hate each other. We need more love in this world, okay? It was crazy. Tell you who wasn't getting love on that stand was OTF Jam. So in the first half of the day, we heard the remainder of the prosecution's kind of, I guess, interrogation of OTF Jam, obviously against Lil Durk. So it was crazy. We kicked off with that. That was half the day. And then the second half of the day, you know, they keep having this issue with like getting the press in there. I feel like they were much fairer to the press today. I think the courthouse staff are dealing with a lot. So, you know, my utmost respect to the courthouse staff. They did get the press in there. You know, I don't think I'm better than anybody else, but obviously I am accredited press. I have an officially authorized press card from the LA Sheriff's Department to be in the court. And from my understanding, I believe that is supposed to guarantee press into the court. Look, I ain't trying to say I'm no minister, no hierarchy or anything like that, but all I'm trying to say is that from my understanding, it's a free press and the press is supposed to be in the courtroom for these proceedings, and they're allowed to be. And you know, the public are also being allowed in. And the judge even brought up and said, look, we want to make sure as much of the public in here can get in as possible, as much of the family as possible. He said, I'm going to start changing things. Things are going to be better. So shout out to the courthouse staff. I did miss the first 15 minutes of Brian Steele grilling OTF Jam. So I didn't see the transition from when they handed Jam over from the prosecution to Brian Steele. I would have loved to have heard what he said at the start. I'm going to have to read the transcript for that 10, 15 minutes like everybody else. But I got in there for the second half. Brian Steele was putting belt to ass. But OTF Jam, he was a lot more fierce than our boy YSL Woody, all right? YSL Woody kind of was getting just like all types of these back and forths. And obviously the YSL Rico trial ended up kind of falling apart, arguably because of YSL Woody being an unreliable witness. Jam was a lot more fierce. He kept himself together, I would say. He kept himself together a lot better. And I feel like Jam had some moments where he clapped back at Brian Steele. Brian Steele had some moments where he got Jam tongue-tied, okay, but it was crazy. So I'm just setting an alarm because I'm about to waffle on for a good hour plus, and I do have a little bit of unrelated business to attend to at a certain time. So bear with me. But anyway, I'm going to just hit you with everything, all right? I got my new notebook. This notebook's nearly full. I'm going to probably go through like 10 notebooks. I'm already on notebook number 3, all right? This is where we're at. These notebooks are literally full. This one's half full from one day. I just started this. It's insane, all right? It's actually insane. I've ordered like 10 notebooks, so don't worry. We good. I got you, all right? We Gucci on the notes. But anyway, Jam continued his testimony from the start of the day on behalf of the prosecution. And where they left it was on a very dramatic note. They left it on an extremely dramatic note where the last thing that Jam basically said was they was outside the hotel. It was like a movie. It was like, you know, at the end of an episode of like a TV series like The Wire or something. It's like they'll end on a big dramatic note and then suddenly it's like, boom, you got to tune in next time. They ended yesterday's testimony. They had caught Quando at the Level Hotel in Los Angeles. They'd seen him outside. They tricked him into coming outside because of the weed man. They're saying Didi literally had Quando in his crosshairs of his gun, said I could kill you right now. It'd be so easy. But they were saying cops was rolling by every minute and they were like, it's too hot. We shouldn't do it. Now, what was super crazy is they left us on that bombshell, on that cliffhanger, and they continued today, okay? I might just take my last couple vitamins before I even get into this because I need the energy. I'm trying to get on my health shit. Last thing I need to do is catch a cold and miss a few days of the trial. I'm not going to lie. There was one person in the courtroom that definitely had some sniffles. So I would implore everyone to look after your health, man. Take your vitamins. I'm a big proponent of vitamins. I take all type of vitamins, okay? If you want my vitamin stack, tap in the comments. But it was crazy, okay? It was crazy. And don't get me wrong, this is one of those videos where I'm going to give both sides, and it was honestly a balanced day. I would say DURK was getting cooked in the first half, and in the second half, OTF Jam, it was a battle. Brian Steele was cooking him. He was cooking Brian Steele back. But anyway, let's get into it. So Jam continued. They said that night at the Level Hotel, all right, they said that Cuz basically, you know, went with all of the hitters back to their own hotel. They were staying at a hotel that was near Disneyland. Cuz or Didi had basically walked the hitters to their rooms, and apparently they left the guns on the table in the hotel room. When they woke up, all right, it was basically all 5 of them together in that room. Now, I don't know if it was one big hotel room, a suite. They didn't get into that. I don't know if DURK ain't got the budget for dudes. They're probably on twin rooms. You know what I'm saying? I don't really know, but it didn't sound like they were living the lap of luxury, or obviously. But after that, they basically left the hotel. Jam said he didn't recall if they discussed the previous night having Quando in the crosshairs, but basically they left the hotel and they went to the Level to try and catch Quando. And look, I did a bunch of updates earlier on Instagram, on TikTok. Obviously, follow me there if you're not already. I'm sure you already are if you're here. But there's a bunch of things that I couldn't even, like, I'm seeing myself on TikTok right now. There are a bunch of things that I couldn't even really, like, get off my chest quick enough when I was outside the courthouse, okay? So it was actually quite a lot of stuff that was going on. And let me just check something real quick. All right, my bad. I had to go and eat some food. But anyway, okay, we heard this testimony that they had Quando Rondo in the crosshairs. They then went to his hotel the next morning and they continued to kind of, like, you know, just wait outside, wait next to his Escalade. They were talking about how they kind of changed cars a bunch of times. They're saying that Vonnie came back with the BMW. They all went to the Level Hotel. Jam was in the Infinity with Boogie, Flockett, and Lindsay. Didi was in the BMW with Vonnie. Jam identified the BMW outside the Level Hotel from footage. Said yeah, that's the car from the footage they showed him. And they said if it wasn't so busy, they'd have shot him outside the Level in the morning. But it was busy. They said it was a lot of people walking around. They'd already decided yesterday that it was too hot. All right, they just said, look, killing him here ain't really gonna fly. And they pretty much went from place to place going through that same thing. He said he doesn't remember who said what, but just generally the consensus among the group was that it was too crowded and that they couldn't have that conversation, so that they couldn't commit that murder. That was the conversation, but he didn't know who said what. So they followed Quando's Escalade after this to the Litco dispensary. They said that they noticed Quando's truck outside. They noticed that it pulled inside, and Jam even said, I knew that it was there. I remember that. They showed him a surveillance image and said, I remember there was a truck. It's like, looks like a Hellcat Durango or something, like a Dodge with a stripe down the middle of it, like a double stripe over the top of it. And he said, I remembered that striped truck. He said, I thought Quando's car was closer to the exit. And then they showed him another video from the surveillance where the car was closer to the exit. And he was like, yeah, that's how I remembered it. So basically, they said they considered killing Quando in front of the dispensary. They basically showed the footage, or the still images of the Infinity, the slider car kind of circling around. And basically, they Jam said, yeah, that was us. That was us sliding around. That was us circling the block. He said that Jam and Lindsay got in the BMW with DD and Cuz, as well as CVL Shorty. They basically, hang on a sec. Yeah, they basically said that they was CVL Shorty or Lindsay was apparently going to go in the dispensary to see if Quando and them were there. They were all in the cars discussing the plan. It sounded like they were on kind of a FaceTime communicating between the cars. And they basically sent Lindsay in to do the reconnaissance. He apparently went in. He said that he saw that Quando was in the building in the back. He said, I could see them, but there was armed security there. They said they asked if anyone heard from DURK around this time. And actually, interestingly enough, Jam said, I don't know nothing. Don't know. Can't say if anyone else heard from DURK. He didn't hear from DURK. So there wasn't communication with DURK during that period of time, apparently. He said that they was in the car for a while. They were sat there in the heat with hoodies on. And he said that they looked mad suspicious. Everyone in the car was like, we looking mad suspicious. So they had second thoughts about doing it at Litco 2, and they ended up parking at another spot. They said they ended up in what they described as like a church school parking lot. I don't know if it was a church or a school or a church school. I don't know. But definitely, you know what I'm saying? I don't know, maybe that would have been a good time for Jesus to step in and maybe give him a change of heart. But it said that they got out of the car and they all spoke. And apparently they were all talking about this situation. And Jam, I don't know if he was saying he said this or this was what other people said about the conversation. But he basically said, like, this shit didn't feel right. We were scrambling. This isn't going to go wrong. He had a bad feeling about everything. Jam said that he said to the CVL, Shorty, Flocker, and Boogie, he said, this don't feel right. He said, like, police interference is going on, that we're going to get caught if we do this here. There's too many cops around. This just ain't going to work. So Jam apparently texted Didi at this point and said, man, bro, Flocker and them are scared. They too jittery. I don't think we should do it with them. And he basically said, I tried to call it off. All right. He was hoping that Didi would call it off. He said, I know they really want to do it. And Didi calling it off is one thing, but Jam is another. He basically said that he felt like the only person that could call this off was Didi. He said that Didi had a stronger relationship with DURK than him. Didi was the only person that could pull the brakes on this situation. He said he felt Didi and DURK was close and shit. He thought that DURK obviously would feel a type of way, but he knew that he wasn't comfortable being the one calling it off. He was too low in the hierarchy on this situation, and DURK was too thirsty for the hit to put his hand up and say, I don't want this to happen. He said, I felt it was dangerous to stop. If I stopped the killing, it would lead them to kill me. He said, they flew me to LA. I didn't even know how to book a flight. He said, these people were my way out, my way around. I didn't know what was going on. He said he felt like that DURK wouldn't have Didi killed if Didi called it off. He said Didi and DURK were more like brothers. They had a different type of bond. He said that Flocker and Lindsay seemed scared. They seemed kind of like worried about it. Jam said he was closest with Boogie. That was his homeboy he spent a lot of time with. And he basically said that he told Didi, he said, these guys ain't ready. He said numerous times, I tried to call it off. And apparently Didi didn't even reply to Jam. He said that they then got a call that Quando was apparently leaving the dispensary. They were supposed to get back on top of them, but for a brief period of time, the BMW lost Quando Rondo and both cars actually scrambled. But it seemed like they kind of eventually found them. The BMW sent Flocker their location. Jam kind of described, dropping a pin, sharing where they were at, and then they kind of met back up again and continued. Now, Jam identified pictures of Quando's Escalade with the Infinity right next to it, and Jam said we pulled up right next to the truck 6-7 times, all right? He said they discussed shooting the vehicle in traffic, doing a drive-by, but they said drive-bys don't always hit people. They wanted to be certain that Quando was actually there getting hit. They said they had a discussion in the car about doing a drive-by. And the two cars were on the phone with each other. Probably FaceTime, but we don't know. He said they all then went to the Bape store. They were then back in traffic when Quando Rondo got to the Bape store. They eventually tracked him down there, and they discussed committing the murder in the Bape store. I love the Bape store. The Bape store of Melrose, no. All right? I can't believe that. It's insane. So Didi said, yo, y'all could just run in there and get them. And somebody said, well, what if they got a security door? We could end up being locked in there. Maybe someone could hold the door. They talked about that. They said the owners ain't just going to buzz them out if they run in there and shoot everyone up. And there were other people. There were other civilians in the Bape store. So they basically said that they didn't feel comfortable hitting them at the Bape store too. Thank God. Like, bruh, that would have been awful. Horrible. I've been in that store. It's full giant, all glass at the front. Not that many shelves. And it's a very small store. That's crazy. They said that they then followed them to the gas station. Didn't remember the route, but basically followed them to the gas station. And Jam said something really interesting. He said, I didn't even know what the Beverly Center was until his attorney told him about it. They didn't know they was doing this hit outside one of the busiest, most prestigious shopping districts in California. I went to the Beverly Center the other day to buy some shoes, and I went there, and I was thinking, I cannot believe someone did a hit here. It was corporate as fuck. I went to the Prada store. I'm thinking, you doing a hit outside this? I've driven by the gas station where this tragedy happened. Ooh, that's my alarm going off. I was startled then. I've driven past the gas station where this happened many, many times, and I've always found that it really just it's just bait as hell. In the still images that they showed of the crime scene, you can see the Beverly Center's big lit up logo. It is a giant shopping mall in one of the most upmarket places in the entire world. We're talking Beverly Hills. This isn't like, oh, it was a nice shopping district, the Gold Coast in Chicago. You've got really nice shopping districts in a city, and then you've got some of the nicest shopping districts in the world. Beverly Hills is up there above London, Harrods, like the most exclusive, swanky place that you could imagine in the entire world. I'm thinking places like Dubai, I don't know, Singapore, probably got, bro, this is Beverly Hills. The most bait place you could have done this. But Jam said I didn't even know what the Beverly Center was. Okay, that blew my mind. Until his attorney told him about it. So they showed pictures of him at the gas station. He said that he saw a tall, dark-skinned dude, basically, and like, I don't know if he was saying that was the driver, or if it was Pab or what, but he was just basically saying that he'd seen someone. And he said that amongst the group, it was decided then and there that that's when they were going to do the murder. They knew the BMW wasn't there. It was kind of hiding away. They were in touch via phone. And all the folks in the slider decided now is the time. Jam said, we just came up with the decision. This is the place. This is the time. Let's do it. And they replayed the murder footage from all four angles. And Pab Jam gave his reaction to the murder, and I just want to say rest in peace to little Pab. Savia Robinson didn't deserve this, and I think the Free Dirk fans were much more respectful today. I think because Dirk had a better day in court than yesterday, but I'm finding it so frustrating that people are talking about this case like there's no evidence, there ain't nothing on Dirk. No, they talking like Lil Pab doesn't even exist. Lil Durk is not the most important in that courtroom. Lil Pab and his family, in my opinion, are the most important people in that courtroom, and this wasn't a random made-up Rico. This is a real young man who had his whole life ahead of him. He deserves so much more. He had a whole future ahead of him. And it was wrong what happened, okay? I was speaking to like a Lil Durk fan that was sat next to me, a respectful guy, and he was basically saying, he's a Muslim guy, and he was basically saying, look, inshallah, Durk beats this case. And I couldn't help myself, man. I said, well, you a big Durk fan? He said, yeah. I said, you know, I wasn't being disrespectful, but I just said, you know, what do you think of the victim? And he said, oh, you know, it's a cold world. And I just was irritated by that. I thought I was disrespectful. He only said that to me, but I was just a bit irritated by that. And I said, don't you think what is alleged to have been done in this case is haram? And he kind of was a bit flustered by that. I don't think he'd even thought that far, but he was kind of like, yeah, I guess. All right. And I don't know if that was a teachable moment, but I feel like I maybe had a little bit of an impact on this young man. Just like, you know, inshallah, you know, we're fellow Muslims, but it's just kind of like, bro, I don't know what religion Lil Pab was. I know Quando's a Muslim, and I said to the guy, he was young, I said, will you respect the verdict in this case? And he said, I will respect the verdict in this case. And I think that's the most important thing. And I think when we get to the verdict, I think either a lot of people are going to have to just stop talking, or they're going to have to accept the facts. And right now, there's been a lot of facts, there's been a lot of fiction, there's been a lot of interrogation. People think I have this thing against Dirk. I've got all kind of people crawling out the woodwork talking about you hate Dirk, you're anti-Dirk. I'm pro-facts, and I've been covering this case more than everyone. I upset a few people outside the courtroom the other day when I said I'm probably one of the most qualified people to talk on this, and they're like, why? What makes you more qualified than me? And I said, well, I was covering King Von when he was alive. In 2019, I did a video about KI, and King Von and his team got onto me. They tried to delete my channel. Von was pissed. Von tweeted about me. You guys don't know what the fuck's going on. There's people in that courtroom who don't know who Von is, right? And respectfully, you know, I was explaining to a few people King Von's backstory and what happened and how we got to this point. And I'm explaining to people, bro, 7 years, that's crazy. It's 2026. 7 years, probably around this time, a little bit longer than 7 years and change. 7 years ago, I was doing videos about King Von killing KI, and his team was pissed, and they was threatening me, all right? I was going to war with Von back when Von was alive, and I was never scared of Von like that, all right? I never got a chance to meet the guy. But I've been standing up telling the truth about these situations for years. Nobody's going to stop me. And I think that I'm very well qualified to cover this. I explained to someone today, I said, I've made a 4-hour documentary about this case like 2-3 years ago, like within a year of this happening. And that's not me being a hater. That's me basically just having my eyes and ears open and saying the guys that were involved in this told on themselves extensively before they were arrested. It's a fact. Everyone that knows what's going on knows that. Anyway, I'm getting off track here, okay? I want to get to the end of this page, and I'm going to just take a little short break. But they decided that was the time. I just wanted to make that clear before we get to the murder, because, you know, I also checked someone today. So there's a guy in court. He's a nice guy, but every time they show like the murder footage or something bad, he's like, "Oh wow!" And I had to check him and say to him, "Bro, you got to stop saying 'oh wow' when you're seeing murder footage, because it's disrespectful, and the family's here, and like it's not a 'oh wow' scenario, bro." And I just said, please, would you mind just not doing that? And he was cool, and he was a really nice guy, so I respect him. But I just wanted to, just little things like that, bro. I'm not trying to, it's not my courtroom, but it's just like, this ain't, even though I've covered this extensively, I ain't covering this story talking about wow, like, I'm just telling you what's going on, okay? Anyway, I'm gonna move on. I'm getting off track here, okay? But I just wanted to let people know, and I know some people are gonna appreciate that. But anyway, moving on, okay? So they did it, all right? They did the crime. Jam looked at the footage. He looked at all of the angles. He said it was the CVL shorty at the front that had the Beretta. And I believe Jam was handed the Beretta originally. It sounds like at some point the guns were kind of redistributed. Apparently they were on the table in the hotel overnight. Jam said, look, I'm used to walking up on people. I didn't think that CVL would start shooting from so far away. Everything happened so quick. Jam said he was in the middle. He's the guy wearing the red Prada shoes, and the third guy is Flocker. He said we did it, and we ran back to the car. You saw what happened, all right? That's what it was, and it was me, and I was there. He said that Boogie was driving fast as hell. Jam told him to slow down. He said, be cool. This speeding is bringing attention to us. Dee basically asked them in the car, did you hit something? How many shots you let off? Jam said he shot 4 times. He said it happened so fast. He said the CVL shorty started shooting first, and then he heard the switch go off, and the CVL shorty fell down. He thought that he fell and got killed. He thought that he'd got hit, and then apparently CVL shorty yelled to Flocker, damn Flock, you almost shot me. Now, this ain't the first time that somebody has apparently done a crime and then got themselves into a scenario where it's like they damn nearly shot their homie. There's a video going around Chiracology recently of like a bunch of guys in a shootout. It's my second alarm. A bunch of guys in a shootout, and then like they shooting, and then it looks, this isn't actually what happened, but they basically were shooting, and it looked like one of their homies shot one of their own friends trying to shoot past them. It's just a mess. That's why these guys are lucky that they didn't accidentally kill each other. The prosecutor said, were you not worried about like the gas tank exploding, like you shooting up a gas station? And Jam just was like, no, like didn't even cross his mind. I thought that was really, really interesting. Anyway, I'm going to take a quick break. I'm just going to pause, and I'll be back very soon. Okay, so after that, all right, he would basically claim that he had responded to Dee, all right? He basically was being asked, or he basically, what was interesting is he kind of said that they got back into the car, all right? They were getting asked by Dee all these questions. Who did you hit? How many times did you let shots off? What happens? Who did what? They're basically saying they responded to Dee. They said that Lindsay said that he almost emptied his whole clip. They're saying Flocker, the switch got off, but it jammed. And Jam apparently looked at his gun, and this is what was interesting. He basically said he looked at his gun, and he said he let off 8 shots, but he knew it was less looking at his clip, but he didn't say how many. So he said that Dee called from the BMW, and they said that Cuz was in that car with him. He says that he doesn't remember hearing Cuz on the phone, but it was Dee asking all the questions. I guess it was a FaceTime. He says that they stopped the car. The CVL shorty jumped out the car, unzipped his hoodie, threw his gun. Jam told him, get his gun. You moving too quick, you moving too loose with it. They basically put their clothes and guns in a garbage can. It sounded like Jam was kind of calm and collected, everyone else panicking, and he like, yo, just chill, like relax, like we're gonna do this properly. So after that, they said that they basically went to a parking garage that was underground, some kind of parking garage, and then pretty much Jam took his hoodie off. He said he tossed it just in some random spot in his parking garage, and then he dropped their location for them to be picked up. Now, after that, okay, they basically said, how did you all get into this BMW? And the Jam basically replied to the prosecution. He said, look, we all got... Sorry, my bad. I jumped forward. My bad. I was distracted by something going on the screen over here. I'm going to take it off so I don't get distracted again. So they all met up after in this underground parking garage in a side street, okay? They dropped their location. Boogie, Jam, Flocker, and a CVL shorty or David Lindsay, they basically got picked up by the BMW, all right? And Jam basically said something that sounded hilarious. He said, look, he said, Flocker big, Boogie big, I'm kind of big. And the prosecution said, how did you all get in the BMW? Jam said, all three of them got in the back, and I laid across them. I literally laid across all three of them, laid out in the back, all right? CVL, Shorty, or Lindsay, Boogie, and Flocker, they sat on the back row of the BMW, and I'm laying across them. So all four were crammed in the back. Vonnie was driving, and Dee Dee was in the front. And he kind of made a point. He said, cuz Vonnie, he a smaller guy. Why he a smaller guy? But he in the front, he got the front seat, all right? And we all crammed in the back, all the big stocky dudes, right? That kind of made no sense, but it was crazy. But anyway, after that, allegedly, this is what he said. Now, there was something here that was contradicted later on. People are going to be saying, you're a liar, you're a liar. I wrote this down and I let people know what was said. And then Jam contradicted himself later on, okay? That's what it is. Allegedly, all right? Dee Dee called Lil Durk when they were all in the BMW crammed in there together. Now, he says that he doesn't know exactly when Durk got on the phone or at what point, but he could hear Durk's voice. I guess it was a FaceTime. And apparently Durk asked the same questions that Dee Dee asked. Did someone get hit? How many times did you shoot? What did you do specifically? And they all gave the same answers that they gave Dee Dee. Apparently this was on speakerphone. He said he couldn't remember Durk's reply. And then they went to an In-N-Out burger restaurant, okay? And then after that, all right. Now this is kind of interesting. That wasn't the contradiction I thought it was going to be. That's actually coming later. But anyway, they went to the In-N-Out restaurant, okay? And this was crazy. Jam said as soon as they walked in there, he saw a police officer. The police officer looked at Jam and sized him up. And Jam said, I thought, damn, did he notice me because of my shoes? It made me nervous. 2 cops were on camera and they walked out when the killers walked in, basically, right? That's how I described it, because they played the footage back. And you saw the 2 cops, they at the door. They damn near holding the door open for the killers to walk in. The cops are walking out, and one of the cops looked him up and down. And Jam said, look, we didn't want to be in there. We didn't want to be in and out. It was hot. We was all looking around. We wanted to get on and get off, get back in the truck. And eventually, we kind of got out of there pretty quick. We got back in the truck, and we went back to Vonnie's place. All right. And they're saying that when they were there, Cuz basically asked that same driver of the Escalade to give them a price to take them all the way to San Diego Airport. That was agreed. And then they went. They basically got on. They were heading away for 2 to 3 hours to San Diego. And he claimed that in that whole car ride, they didn't discuss the murder. They just played with their phones. They barely spoke, right? There was no partition. It wasn't the Sprinter van. This was a random Escalade. I don't know. It could have been an Uber Black. Could have been a private black truck car service. Whatever it was, took him back to San Diego Airport. So that was interesting, all right? So after that, right, he basically claimed they played on their phones the whole time. It was Flocker, the driver, Dee Dee, Jam, Boogie, and Lindsay. He said he couldn't remember if they tried to figure out what had happened on the hit. He didn't say if they had looked at the news, looked at the TMZ, any of that stuff. He didn't say. He just said we played on our phones. So they got to San Diego Airport. He looked at the picture of them all together in the airport after TSA. He confirmed that was them. Jam, Dee Dee, and the other 2 were in the pic. They basically said that they got the call to fly out originally from Booney Mo. And at this point, Kanye West walked into the courtroom. It was very, very bizarre. He walked into the courtroom. Everybody paused. The lawyers paused. The jurors looked over. Everybody was in disbelief. I'm not going to lie. At some point, Kanye just stared me down. He looked over at me and just stared me down. I just stared back at him. I'm thinking, this yay. I'll keep it real with you. Everybody in that courtroom was starstruck. I was definitely like taken aback, but I'm somebody, I like to just keep it so real. I don't really give a fuck about Kanye like that. All right. Yes, it was big news. I made a video about it. All right. I wasn't giving a shit about talking to Kanye. I don't care about Kanye. I'm not impressed by Kanye. I low-key don't respect a lot of the stuff that he's done. He's made some great music in his career. Seems like he's an asshole. Would never want to work with him. Would never want to do business with him. That's just a fact. All right. I'm just keeping it all the way 100, all right? I don't need nothing from Kanye. Kanye definitely ain't getting nothing from me, and it just is what it is. And so he was there, and he made a spectacle out of the situation, and I felt like the energy in the room changed. I didn't see Durk look at Kanye. I'm sure he probably did. Maybe I was writing my notes. I was focused on my notes, but it was like everybody, all eyes were off Durk, off the judge, off Jam, and on Kanye. I didn't notice Jam looking at Ye. I'm sure he probably saw him. He probably noticed it was a moment, all right? But yeah, anyway, I'll mention more about that in a bit. But really, it doesn't matter. I don't care. Who fucking cares? Kanye ain't got no say over this shit. You got no pull in the courtroom, bro. You ain't, bro. What you out here chasing clout like everybody else that turned up to the courtroom to film me outside? Okay. So anyway, after that, all right, we got back to what was actually important, which was Jam talking. He said, when somebody dies, their death is mocked by the ops. It's a way to taunt rivals. He said, in Chicago, people post pictures of dead bodies of people that have been killed. They say that they're smoking them. He said people say they smoke in Tuka or Crump. He said it's like smoking on their ashes, or when someone gets killed, they say they got their asses smoked. Anyway, he went on to say he got back to Chicago. He said he felt bad. He said he felt bad about what happened in LA. He said that the beef with Quando had nothing to do with him. He said he did 12 years for doing an attempted murder with people he didn't know. He felt that the murder was sloppy. He didn't know the guy that got shot, Lil Pab. And in Jam's eyes, he said Lil Pab was an innocent man. He said, I had no beef with Quando Rondo. That was some rap stuff. That's not my level. All of the young boy Quando Rondo stuff had nothing to do with me. He said if Booney Mo was King Von, I would have got involved because I had a relationship with Booney. Von wasn't my homie. That was Dirk's homie. And then this is insane. This is insane. He said that he spoke to Dirk about the hit because Jam was feeling a type of way, and he FaceTimed Dirk. Dirk answered. Dirk was at his crib. He was in California with OTF-C3, and he said, I asked Blood, Dirk, I asked him, I said, like, out of 1 million people you could have called, bro, I just did 12 years. Why you have to put me in that situation? Apparently, Dirk didn't even let Jam finish. Dirk just cut Jam off and just said to him, he loves him. He said, y'all didn't hit Quando, but you hit Pab. Pab counts. He was on the internet saying he was smoking on Von, and he can't say that no more. He can't say he's smoking Von no more. He's been disrespectful speaking on Von's death, and apparently he was smiling on FaceTime while he said this. That was one of the most damning things that I had seen. And Jam basically said that he just sort of went along with it. He said he thought, this isn't really what I called about. I called to ask why he put me in the situation with dudes that I don't know. He thought I wasn't close enough to Flacker to do that. My Cody on the attempted murder case was Booney's cousin, and I did dirt with him, and he told on me and went to jail. And he was just pissed that he got put in that situation again. But he said he didn't really feel like he could press the issue with Dirk. He said, I agreed about Pab and got off my phone. I was never offered any payment for this. That never happened. Now, there was a break. The jury was told to rise. The courtroom was told to rise for the jury. Kanye didn't rise for the jury, and I really didn't respect that. I thought that was disrespectful to the justice system, to the liberty of the court. It's a free court, all right? It is an American court, the American justice system. You don't get to just make up the rules because you go along. You don't just get to say, oh, Dirk's converted to a religion so he can be judged by God and commit murders in society. That's not how it works. I really thought that Kanye was a disgrace for not rising for the jury. The judge rises for the jury. The judge being the top person there. Everyone rises when the judge walks in, all right? Because the judge is in control of the courtroom. But the judge made it clear that once jury has been selected, he says he will be rising for the jury because the jury is above him. The jury are the people, a jury of your peers. They're meant to be your peers just like you. It's a diverse jury. There's black jurors, white jurors, other kinds of races of jurors. I'm not even going to speculate, but it's not all black people, not all white people. It's not all men, not all women. It actually looks to me like a pretty diverse jury. And probably a good representation of LA. Just a jury of your peers, just your peers in Los Angeles. I think we should respect the jury. We should respect their decision. And like I said to that Dirk fan that was saying, oh, he hopes Dirks beats it, or, he doesn't think he did anything. Everyone needs to respect the jury and their decision. And if they make a decision that Dirk's guilty, you guys, everybody's got to respect that. All you free Dirkers, you're going to have to respect that, all right? Because otherwise, what are we doing? You're going to just have an insurrection and just have complete mob rule. If you make good music, you can just commit murders in society. And if the jury acquits Dirk, not guilty, anyone else, I will accept that decision absolutely wholeheartedly. There's not going to be me saying, oh, it's unfair, I knew he did it. I will accept the jury's result. Everybody else should accept the jury's result. And Kanye not respecting the jury enough to simply stand up like everybody else. Obviously, he sees himself above everyone, but I don't respect it, and I thought it was disgraceful. Anyway, we returned from the break. All right, Ye, I believe he came back for like a little bit. I think that's when he stared me down. And then after that, no, I think he stared me down before. I think he actually stared me down before. But regardless, right, he was back, and then I think he left, and then. No, he didn't come. He came after the short break, but not after the full lunch break. So I think he did come back, and then he stared me out, and then he left. Anyway, who cares? He's not important in this. But Jam got back on the stand and he continued doing his thing. He said he was never offered any payment after the killing of Lil Pab. He said there was a group discussion about payment for the killing before, but he said after the murder, I did record a song called The Federal Feast Freestyle that was on the OTF Loyal Bros 2 album. And I told a few people in the courtroom, I said, hey, when you get back home, listen to that Loyal Bros 2 album, because that shit is a low-key confession, all right? People are so mad at me. Oh my God, you're biased. Go listen to the album, all right? And be honest with yourself. Just go listen to the album and be honest with yourself if you think this is incriminating. So they... Ooh, excuse me, it's not important right now. So they basically showed the album cover. They showed the Federal Freestyle, you know, a still from the music video. He said that the song was recorded after the shooting in 2022. He said before the shooting, he had never recorded a song for OTF, all right? He hadn't been a rapper, hadn't been into any of that stuff, and he was paid $10K for the song. He said he didn't think he would have been included on the album if he said no to the shooting. He said he wouldn't have even been alive. He wouldn't have even been around if he went against DURK. If DURK wanted something done, he had to go along with it. He wouldn't have even been alive, let alone recording the Federal Freestyle, which was compelling. So I've had an ulcer in my mouth for days, bro. It's getting better, though, but it's not gone. Right there. Excuse me, sorry, I'm getting too casual here. So after that, he said that Flocker and Cuz thought that they would be getting paid. They said in the car... no, sorry, my bad, not Cuz, CVL. Flocker and the CVL shorty, Lindsay, they thought they were getting paid. In the car, when Didi called DURK, he basically said Flocker and CVL asked if you're going to straighten out the money. And apparently DURK just said, oh, I got them, they're going to be straight. And then they basically left without paying them. So it was like they was expecting money. They was hanging around Didi for the money. And they ain't get shit, apparently. Or at least as far as I'm aware, they ain't get nothing. DURK talking about half a ticket or a M for the murder. And it sounded like when it all went down, he like, cool, yeah, he ain't pay his tab. That's how it sounded. I'm not going to lie to you. And maybe he thought he was being slick on some Diddy shit of like, well, if I don't pay the hitman, if I don't pay the tab, you can't say it's murder for hire. I don't think that's how it works. But he basically went on to say that they tried to stay back with Vonnie to get the money. He never gave them anything. Flocker and Lindsay, they didn't have a close relationship with DURK. While this was going on, there were numerous objections from Brian Steele. The judge actually got frustrated with this and called a sidebar, and he was letting most of the prosecution's questions go through. So after this, we talked about King Von. He claimed that King Von was an O-Block member. Before the LA shooting, they said DURK spoke about O-Block and King Von's death. He said he saw O-Block members running from King Von when he died. He said nobody did nothing. Arrangements were made. DURK let it be known, and he offered to pay for Airbnbs for O-Block members in Atlanta to do their homework and stand on business for Von. DURK said the whole world saw them run. That was crazy. And this is how they ended up in this beef with Monaduke from O-Block. And I'm not going to lie, the way the beef was apparently sounded in court between Monaduke and O-Block, it starts making you think, I wonder if DURK got... Because we still... don't officially know who killed Monaduke, but anyway, all right. Anyway, I'm not trying to put a seventh body on DURK at this point in the game. But essentially, okay, as time went on, you know, we hear more stuff. Jam's saying that he saw O-Block members running the footage. I thought they were going to show the footage, but we didn't see it. He basically said, I heard this, that they had gotten into a beef with Monaduke from O-Block. He said DURK and Duke had words. Jam was present when a FaceTime call was going on. And then DURK had essentially put a comment on the internet that was sort of talking down on O-Block. We didn't see any of these posts. I could probably find them if I had enough time, but I ain't going to do that right now. But then Booney FaceTime with Didi and Jam. DURK and Duke was basically having words. Everyone was listening in. Duke told DURK, look, we're out here every day on the O. Nobody's sliding on us. And DURK said, y'all ain't do nothing for Von. Duke said, what are y'all done for Von? And DURK said, don't worry what we did something. Now that was a little bit self-incriminating, but obviously, look, this is Jam's word against DURK's. All right. And they said DURK put Didi on the phone. Jam and Didi said if O-Block want to get into it, they can get into it. And Jam was back in the beef. He was ready to slide on O-Block. So DURK was on a different line with Duke, and Booney was there on a FaceTime with Didi and Jam. Jam had numerous conversations about O-Block not sliding for Von. They're saying that Duke felt like DURK was mad at him about something that happened with Fat Fat. Now, we also heard about this Richo Lamron, who basically... we saw his picture. They identified him as Richard Ramsey. He's been brought up a lot before. But they basically said in 2023, there was a beef with Lamron Richo. Didi and DURK were deep in the beef. They all discussed violence against Richo in a group chat. And they said that Lamron had beef with Booney and Jam, and DURK had basically all took Booney's side. So they showed DMs between Jam and DURK regarding the Lamron Richo beef. And it was interesting. So we saw DMs. Jam basically said, say less. I'm on it, blood. And then we heard a voice note from Jam where he basically said, blood, I'll say what no one else will tell you. Stop talking to them. There's no point. Ain't no peace. They all blaming it on Richo. F them N-words. We don't need them. They thinking they did something. Tell them I won't save them on Lil Mo. And then DURK liked that message. Jam then followed up. He said, them N-words is bitches. They played with us for the world. I think for the world to see. Anything after, we're going to look like we need them on some weak shit. So after that, so after that, there were a couple more voice notes. So Jam, I believe, sent a voice note saying, I mean, if we patch it up, we're gonna look scared or desperate. I said it how it was. They played us to the world on social media. Richo did a long live about Lamron 300 being split from OTF. It wasn't a concern. I just thought F them. So that wasn't a voice note. Sorry, that was him just clarifying what he meant by that message. There was then DURK replied basically saying act bad. No, so my bad. I believe before this whole conversation, there was like a little glimpse of a message DURK had said at the start of that conversation. And it was just flashed up for a second. They weren't really trying to bring attention to it, and I didn't read it out. But DURK had said, act bad, Buddy and them are booty shakers. Basically saying that these guys we're beefing with, they're dancers, and they ain't really on it like that. So then they played another voice note that basically Jam had sent in a follow-up. And apparently he said, I don't know how other MFs are trying to play it. Just takes a couple of calls. I'll do everything myself, folk. I thought he said calls. He actually said cars. He was like, just take a couple of cars. I'll just do everything myself, folk. Basically saying, I was telling Vonnie, give me a couple of cars, couple sliders. I'll handle the beef myself. I was going to slide on Richo, and anybody playing with us, I just needed hot cars, stolen cars that couldn't be tracked to us. Now, that was crazy. And then after that, Jam and DURK, they basically asked for more clarification. The court asked, the prosecution asked, what does it mean when you put it on Lil Mo? And they saying Lil Mo, that was, I think he said it was Dee Dee's cousin. And he basically was saying that they merged it on him. That he was a fallen member that they swore on his life. So there was another long sidebar, and then the judge kind of gave instructions, just basically saying, look, this gang evidence it's not a gang murder. This is just giving you a little bit of backstory. It's not about the Chicago gang war. Anyway, so after that, Jam kind of gave some clarification. He basically said, look, I was saying that they did all this stuff on social media to diss OTF. Now they're officially separate from OTF. They said fuck us, so it's fuck them. They did something bogus. If they want a gunfight, it was whatever. He was basically ready for action. He was ready to shoot on behalf of DURK. All right? Not the only time, allegedly. So there were other messages about Richo. There was a group chat that apparently had Dee Dee, Zoo, Jam, Wook, DURK, and some other people in it. Basically, it said someone was on the phone with Richo. Somebody messaged on the phone with Richo on my way threat. Dee Dee said, why are you on the phone with that goofy, telling him link now? And then THF Bezu jumped in. He said, find out the fuck. He said, find out the fuck. I think he meant to say, find out the low, fuck a link. It's that, buddy. And then Jam basically explained, he said, what Zoo meant was find out where they're at, let's link and do violence to them. There would then be an attachment sent from DURK, which was a screenshot of a message that he had sent to Lamron Richo of him basically replying to a post that he had put up. So Richo had put a post up saying, video shoot on 64th and normal, get near, he not going to let his fans down at Booney Mo. Basically, Jam said this was Richo challenging Booney Mo to come and shoot a video on their block. And then DURK had basically responded to that in a DM that he screenshotted and sent to the group chat, where he basically said, I've got them hunting you up. You better have 3 ski masks on. And Jam basically said, DURK was saying N-words are on your ass. Be ready. Prosecution said, did you consider yourself a hunter? Jam said, of course. I was in on it. I was with it. I was involving myself in this. He said it was a different motivation to the LA murder. This beef was personal. Booney Moses man's. He said, I'm Lamron. They tried to say I wasn't Lamron. I didn't like the internet shit. And he basically said, we tried to hunt Richo before. Richo was on house arrest, stupid ass. He was saying this. People was like chuckling. Like, when Jam got comfortable, he was like really talking street shit on that stand. You could see he was a real demon, a real stepper, just by the way he was talking. He said, we was bumping heads with other people on the block. He said, my baby mama was Lamron. That's who told us that Richo was on house arrest a while ago. We was doing social media research with Boona to find Richo's low. They posted in a house, and they knew what house it was in because they knew girls who had been to that house before. They then showed some texts. This was Boona saying, new line blood, Unk sliding on y'all to see what you got going on, what situation you can handle this. And basically, Jam replied, he said, all Unk coming with is 97 shit. And then Boona basically said no one getting any money, blood. And then Jam was like, what about cars and shit? Ain't no sliding or ain't no sliders? So basically the context of this conversation was it sounded like DURK wasn't dishing out money. And Jam was like, okay, well, what's going on? You feeding the block? Like, are there sliders? Are there stolen cars available? What's going on with that? Now, Booney responded with a voice note, and this was really bad news. This was played in court. So Jam eventually replied to this voice note. He said, on Scud, you right. But the voice note said, this was Booney Mo saying this. And this was, I ain't gonna lie, this is fucking crazy. He said, Blood said he wants shit to go right. He's buying people cribs first. He want to know who in charge first. He gave out, he says he gave out 5 to 600K to the streets. And he said he wants to know what's going on with shit and positions. Ain't shit been happening. There's going to be sliders, but he wants real structure so we know who to blame when things go wrong. No more little boy shit. If I fuck up, I get the blame. If Boona fucks up, he gets the blame. If Jam fucks up, he gets the blame. That's why Unk's involved. No one can tell cuz that we won't know. Well, no one can tell cuz because we won't know who got what. And he said sliders are going to get bought, but it's going to be done right. They call him for money every day. So what it sounded like Booney was saying was that Lil Durk's put $500,000 to $600,000 in the streets and ain't shit happened. Nobody's slid. Nobody's doing the shit that he wanted them to do. He's going to literally buy people houses first, get everyone in position. He's going to give out sliders, and he's basically going to give everyone their own responsibilities in the gang, allegedly. And then he's going to like oversee that, but he's going to separate himself. So people are responsible for their own crimes, but he's not going to know who's got what. He sounded like a chief. Sounded like a chief. Sounded like a boss. Sounded like a kingpin. I don't know. He's sounding like maybe this Lil Durk OTF Family Over Everything album cover. All right. It sounded like he might be a boss. All right. Imagine making something like this for your album cover, and the FBI probably making something similar. I'm not saying that these are the folks that were in the gang, but I'm saying that DURK was sounding like a boss, a kingpin, like he was in charge of this, okay? And while we're here, let me just show you the Loyal Bros 2 album cover because it's legendary at this point, okay? No, it's not working. This is the Loyal Bros 2 album cover, right? Is that blood in the middle? Is that blood? Everybody hooded? 5 people. So when they showed this in court, it was a different version of the cover and it didn't have all these people behind them. But it's like, you the voice, right? Who's this person shaded in front of the gang? Like you in front of her, you almost like a leader of a gang. You're almost like you a leader. I wonder who that's meant. Oh, the chain says the voice. Okay, I'm pretty sure I've heard of someone called the voice. Oh, and everybody's got an OTF trait. So it's almost like you're the lead. It's almost like you're the leader. The voice is the leader of OTF blood. This was all a bad idea, but anyway, sorry, I get carried away because I just know too much about this case and everyone's pissed. So from here, we moved on, all right, and they basically said you pled guilty for your role in the LA murder. You were hoping for a reduction in sentence for the murder cases, but no promises were made on your sentence, and you pled guilty to 2 other murders and cooperated and went along with the FBI. He said they basically made it clear. In 2023, he was arrested for something unrelated to the case. There was a gun in the car while he was arrested. He was on parole for the attempted murder, and at that point, he decided to talk to the FBI. In his words, he said he wanted to get it off his chest. He felt that the Pab murder was weighing on him, and he saw an opportunity. He said there were multiple reasons he cooperated. He felt like the murder was done sloppy with people who shouldn't have been there. He said there's a big difference between doing something to someone you don't like and doing something where an innocent person gets killed. He said, I didn't think I was guaranteed to get caught, but I thought about it. He said, LA is full of rich people and actors. It was a bad place to commit a crime. He said he wrote a note to the FBI and we saw the handwritten note. All it said was, I know about murders. I don't want to talk on camera. I know a lot. It was interesting. So he gave that note to an arresting officer. Apparently they let Jam make a phone call. Like whatever police phone that they had there, they couldn't use for some reason. So they basically said, look, we'll let you make a call with your own mobile phone. And, we'll allow that, but we'll record you doing it and just make sure that like nothing untoward is going on here. And he did that. And he said to the cops, he said, hey, can you maybe like give me a scrap of paper to write down a number? And they was like, yeah, okay, we can do that for you. And then instead of writing down a phone number on that scrap of paper, he wrote them that note that said, I know about murders. I don't want to talk on camera. I know a lot. All right. So he said he didn't want to talk on a camera specifically, and he did it discreetly because the body cam cameras be getting people exposed on social media, people snitching or crying. So that's a reference to this, all right? It was interesting seeing this brought up. I doubt anybody else really knew what this is all about. But this is Lil Ted, all right, from TTE, Threats from Everyone, crying and telling the police on body cam. This is exactly what Jam was talking about. I'll tell you about a murder, I swear to God, to get out of a pipe case, all right? So look, at least Jam allegedly didn't cry when he did it, but obviously he referring to this, and apparently this is Lil Ted TTE Baby Threat. This is apparently Dee Dee's brother, all right? I'm pretty sure that they said that he was Dee Dee's brother. Yeah, they saying that it's Dee Dee's brother, okay? That's basically what's going on. So there's a few different angles of this. But let's just give you the completeness. If there's a clip that's really relevant that I've not looked at before, I'm going to pull it up in a video, but this is it.
Hey, stop it. Stop it.
Bruh, that's... I ain't going to lie, that's crazy, bro. They might... Bruh, they threats to everybody, but this one looking like tears to everybody.
Illinois exposed cams.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but it's just like, it is kind of, you guys are supposed to be big, tough, badass guys, right? And like, that's a crazy way to go out. Talking about, please, I'll tell you a murder. They're saying the dude really disappeared after this video came out. All right, said no one gonna rock with him. They saying that's Dee Dee brother. They saying that's Dee Dee brother. This streets thing is just no good. All right, and there was another one of him inside the station as well.
What's her name?
I feel like that was like a effed up version. This is what we were looking for, really.
Illinois exposed cams.
So there was a rumor going around that he'd been caught with a gun that might have had a body on it from Jam, all right? This is the link to he cried throughout the whole arrest, all right? And I remember seeing this go around. This is crazy. They saying that's his brother. Let me see. All right, this is the moment he started crying. Let me just show you this for completeness, then I'll get back onto my notes, all right? We're going to slip a little clip in here.
You got anything else on you, man? No. Besides the gun, you got anything?
I'm on parole, man.
You're on parole for what? Look at me.
Illinois exposed cams.
My son in the house right now by himself, please, bro. My son in the house by himself, bro. He's in the house by himself right now, bro. I got a key. Can I please call somebody?
You're gonna get some.
Please, bro.
Illinois exposed cams.
Get my son, please.
I'll get you next time.
I need to call somebody to get my son.
I'll get you next time, man.
I need to call somebody to get my son, bro. Please.
What's your name?
My name is Theodore Patterson.
So look, you get the gist, all right? You get the gist. Let's just get back to the point here, okay? But that's what Jam's referring to. He was talking about that. He said people getting exposed on body cam for snitching and crying. He talking about Dee Dee brother. That was low-key a little slap in the face to Dee Dee in a courtroom. That went over most people's heads. He said, of course there will be repercussions for snitching. It breaks all of the BD's laws. It equals death, all right? He said that snitching on an op is still bad. Doing it to your own is worse. All right, I could still be killed over this now. He said, I was mad at DURK for putting me in that situation. I'm still mad. He said, cuz seemed like a goofy to me. I did something that I didn't know about. I did something with people I didn't know. I did 12 years for it. I did this for DURK's selfish reasons. Maybe cousin Dee Dee had a reason to do this. I didn't have a relationship with King Von. I didn't know him. I'd never seen CVL Shorty before. I felt that this was all selfish bullshit, and this was crazy. The end of the testimony, it said DURK was supportive for me. He did a lot for me. I'll never forget it. I still got love for him. And I know how bad this looks. Blood was there for me. I can't forget that. And I feel bad for doing this, but I know he hates me, but I still love him, but I don't respect him. That was it. Had a lunch break, came back for a lunch break. Now, unfortunately, there was a lot of a kerfuffle going on getting back into the courthouse, getting back into the courtroom. Obviously, I was media. They were a little bit slow getting the media in, but respectfully, they did get it done. Shout out to the courthouse staff. They are doing a really good job considering how crazy the situation is. So respect to them, but I did get in 15 minutes late. So I didn't see the handover of Jam from the prosecution to the defense, the cross-examination. When I got in there 15 minutes after it started, Brian Steele was already grilling Jam. He was on his ass from the moment get-go, right? So I can't believe we're already 50 minutes into this video. We might go an hour and a half. I don't want to go 2 hours because I literally need to go to sleep. But I'm going to give you all the information I possibly can. So here is what happened, all right? Brian Steele was up there cross-examining Jam, all right? He was going crazy, all right? He was going in. He said, you never really supported your family. We heard before that Jam was supporting his family. He was sticking people up with guns to put food on the table since the age of 12. Brian Steele was basically trashing that. Jam said if my mum was here, she would tell you that that was true. Now, the judge kept getting a little bit annoyed at some of these lines of questioning. They had a sidebar, and weirdly, while that was going on, Jam laughed and shook his head and looked directly at DURK. DURK and Jam looked at each other and smiled. It was like... and then DURK looking over like... but it was like a fake smile. But anyway, after that, all right, Brian still had to change tact. He wasn't allowed to ask about that again, okay? So he basically said, you're testifying here under agreement with prosecutors. Jam said yes. He said, you hope to be released. Jam said, look, I'm not hoping to be released. I'm just hoping for something. Brian Steele said, do you want to be incarcerated? Jam said, well, you do the crime, you do the time, just not for the rest of my life. I want to be free at some point. Brian said, today? Jam said, no. Brian said, less than 12, you hope. And, Jam said, well, my hope is just a number. I just want a number. I don't want life. I just want a number. Brian Steele said, you told a loved one that you expect to serve 18 months. And Jam said, someone I love. Who? Brian Steele said, your wife. You told her that. Jam said, I was just giving her hope. I didn't really believe that. Steele said, you remember you told your wife 18 months concurrent with your parole time. That's what you thought you was getting. Jam said, I don't remember. I don't know what you're talking about. Brian said, you told your wife you wanted to see your new baby. And Jam said, well, I could have. Brian Steele said, you pled out to 3 different murders. He said, you really believe that you can manipulate this situation to get out soon. And he said that you've been in and out of custody since you were 12 years old. You're 34 years old now. The longest time you've actually been out in a straight run is February 2022 to May 2023. He said, you're street smart and you understand the criminal justice system. Jam said, I know I'm street smart, but when did I say I understand the criminal justice system? Brian said, you gave a note to the cops. And Jam said, I only got arrested with a gun. Brian Steele said, you knew you'd get out by telling on murders. And Jam said, he said, no, I didn't know that I'd get out. I never did that before. I never told before. He said, I didn't know what would happen. I'm not out. Brian Steele said, well, you admitted that you're a dangerous person. Jam said, I can be in my past. Yeah, I tried to write down pretty much everything verbatim for this. My fingers were killing me. Man, I got a big old blister on my thumb. Brian Steele said, you hurt people in juvie. Jam said, well, that's what happens in jail. Brian said, you're destructive and a dangerous man. Jam said, I am at times. And he clapped back. He said, you've done hundreds of armed robberies with firearms. He said, yes. Unsuspecting people, you pull firearms, you put them to their face and you take their property, cars and jewelry. Jam clapped back. He said, I ain't never took a car. Brian said, you steal? Jam said, I call it taking. Brian Steele said, if they run, you might shoot them. Jam said, it's possible. Brian said, if they fight, you might not, if they fight you, you might shoot them. Jam said, where are you getting this from? But it's possible. Brian said, that's you. You're living this life. Jam said, it's my past. Brian said, you're used to walking up to people, unsuspecting people, and that got an objection that was sustained. So he continued. He said, he came with another question. He said, you take advantage of situations for your benefit. The reply was, listen, you got to explain the situation better. So Brian said, well, you would take my watch. Jam said, I ain't never stole a watch. You making up a story. What are you talking about? That's how he said it. Brian said, well, you at age 17 went into a store. You locked the door. You trapped the person in there with you and your armed friend. Jam hit back. He said, it was only me that was armed. Brian said, well, the gun was loaded. You didn't even know if that person had a family. Jam said, I know nothing about them. Brian said, you said you would get whatever you want. Jam said, I guess. Brian said, the clerk in the store didn't want to be under your control. So what did you do? Jam said, I killed them. Brian said, not just that. Jam said, I don't know. Brian said, you blew his brains out. Jam said, yes. Brian said, you got his brains all over you and the gun. Jam said, no. And then Brian said, that's what you do. Jam said, that's your opinion. And then Brian Steele was like, you let him lay and linger. Jam was like, what? I didn't lay and linger. I didn't do no like, you saying what? Because I didn't do CPR? And then Brian Steele was like, you said you did CPR? And then the judge was like, that's not what he said. And the judge was like, just move on. So this was crazy. Brian Steele said, you slaughtered a human being and you took his property and you drove back to Chicago and bragged. Jam said, I didn't brag about nothing. Brian Steele said, well, you thought about it. You thought about what you did. Jam said, actually, I did think about it. I called a meeting with the gang. Brian said, did you meet the victim's family? Or you just went on with your life? It didn't bother you. Jam said, I did. It bothered me. That's why I called a meeting. Brian said, you killed other people? Jam said, who? Brian said, Lil Dean. And in a shock moment, Jam clapped back. He said, you know I didn't murder him, right? And then boom, another sidebar. So after that, Brian said, well, you pled guilty in front of this court to robbing and killing Lil Dean in a kidnap resulting in death case. All right? And he said, I pled guilty to that. I pled guilty, but I didn't pull the gun. I didn't kill him. I didn't even see him get shot. And Brian said, cool. On the LA murder, you admitted that you were involved. Jam said, yes. He said, you left Chicago with no clothes and luggage. You didn't even know where you were going or why. You didn't even know why you were going there. Jam said, I didn't. Brian said, you didn't know until you landed, and that's when you find out? Jam said, yeah, I was at Hooters. Brian said, you didn't want to do it. He said, yes. He said, you didn't know these people. Yes. He said, if you have a purpose, you will kill. He said, yes. He said, Vonnie brings you a gun. He said, yes. He said, you don't say no. He said, yes. He said, you don't know that Vonnie, you know that Vonnie books flights. And Jam said, well, never for me. Brian said, you didn't call Jason for a return flight. He said, yes. He said, you went to the Level Hotel ready to kill. People at that hotel, including Lil Pab, people you didn't even know, you were there for a mission. All right? Brian Steele said, you're not a bottle of water. You have a brain. You have a family at home. He said, yes. He said, by August 18th, 2022, you had kids at home. He said, yes. He said, you hardly knew them. Jam said, I did have a good relationship with my kids. Despite the fact I was in jail, I maintained a good relationship with them. Brian Steele said, but at this point, you got kids and you in LA with a gun ready to kill Quando Rondo. He's outside his hotel in a mask smoking a cigarette. You said, there he goes. And Jam said, I thought about all that. All right? He said, I wasn't the only one who said there he goes. And I had a lot more on my mind than murder. And Brian Steele, he said, murder is in your heart. Murder is your heart. All right? And then Jam laughed. He said, no, it's not. Brian Steele said, you don't care who you hurt. Jam said, yes, I do. Brian Steele said, you left countless people hurt. Do you think of that? Jam said, I thought about it before. Brian Steele said, now you're on the witness stand hoping that you'll get back on the streets. Jam said, I guess. Brian said, you're partly the reason why DURK is in this courtroom. Jam said, I told the truth. Brian Steele said, the truth is decided by the public. He said, yes. He said, you're begging and hoping for a guilty verdict. Jam said, no, I'm not. I'm just here telling my side of the story and admitting. Brian said, you want to go home. Jam said, I want a number. I want to go home at some point. Brian said, you want to go immediately. He said, no. He said, you didn't self-surrender. You realized what you did. You were on a mission for hours. As soon as you landed, you went to the mission, you slept, and then you got back to the killing. Jam said, yes. Brian said, no hesitation. You landed in California and your to-do list was one thing, murder. Jam said, I texted Dee Dee. I was trying to stop the murder in other ways. Brian said, you're a high-ranking BD minister. You're one of the highest and most dangerous members. Jam said, I can be. Brian said, then Jam went on to say, well, not every minister is dangerous. And then Brian said, you're dangerous. And Jam just repeated, not all ministers are dangerous. Now, after that, Jam basically said, look, I've admitted to everything I've done. Brian said, do you have the text to show where you tried to stop the murder? And Jam said, I don't have my phone. I don't have the text. Nah. Brian said, as a BD minister, you could have left and gave the gun back. Jam said, no, it's not that easy. He said, why would they call me? I'm not the only minister. When we came home, when I came home from jail, OTF was everything. DURK was the leader. Brian said, well, according to you, if you had a conscience, you could have just left the scene. You could have not followed through. Jam said, it's not that easy. Brian said, you'd rather kill a human you didn't know. And Jam said, or get killed myself. Brian said, so you saying you're more important than the person? Brian said, you're more important than the people you kill? Jam said, no. Brian said, you're a scary person objectively. Jam said, I don't even know what objectively means. And then Brian said, you're dangerous right now. And Jam kind of kicked back. He was like, I'm chilling, bro. That's what he said. So after that, Brian said, when you got out of the car and fired the gun, how many people were in that car? How many people did you know were in that car? Now, I could be wrong. Again, apologies if I got this wrong, but I thought he said one. Of like, how many people you knew were in the car? One, right? Brian said, you don't know. Could have been people with kids. Could have been kids in there. And Jam said, no, we saw them. I never saw kids. That's a trick question. Brian said, you consider your friend Risho. Oh, sorry, my bad. He said, you considered that a ricochet bullet could have killed an innocent person? He said, yeah, I considered it. Brian said, what did you think as you shot the gun? Jam said, I just thought I was going to shoot the truck and leave. I just wanted to do it and get it over with. He said, did you consider that you could have blown up a car by hitting the gas tank? He said, no. Brian said, you're divorced from reality, detached. And Jam said, look, you're using all these big words, man. I don't know what you're talking about right now. Like, you're talking about detached reality. That was kind of interesting. So anyway, in addition to that, all right, it would continue. All right. Brian said, let's talk about DURK. Since the age of 12, you've been in and out of jail since all the way up until 2022. He said, yes. He said, in and out of jail. All right. He said, yeah, I've been in and out. And then Brian basically made a joke, which I thought was in bad taste. He was like, oh, in and out. You're not talking about the restaurant, right? And he was like, no. He said, you got let out for a funeral at one point when you were younger and you fled back to your house. He said, yep. You got 12 years for attempted murder and you shot them multiple times. He said, yep. He said, you maimed them for life. He said, yep. You was born in 92 like DURK. Yep. He said, you didn't grow up in the same hood, but you was close. He said, yep. He said, DURK was into fashion. He was a pretty boy. He had the girls around. Jam said, that's not really what I said. I said he made party songs with Lil Reese in them, but I didn't say nothing about fashion. Brian said, well, he put money on your books when everyone forgot about you. He said, yeah. He said, you didn't tell the jury that DURK's son and your son are friends, best friends, and their mums are friends. He said, yeah. He said, you couldn't support your own family in jail. Yep. DURK said he kept in touch with your mum. He said, yeah. He said, DURK was rising. Jam said he was doing his thing. Brian said he never turned his back on you. He said, yeah. Brian said, let's talk about your claims that DURK was involved in this murder. He said, okay. Brian said, you get out. He said, yep. He said, you come back to this. He said, you come back to no money. He said, yep. And you told DURK you had nothing. He said, yep. He said, you went to a woman. I won't say her name, but he said, you went to a woman's house. You paroled to this woman's house. And then Jam laughed. He's like, yeah. And then Brian said, you lived at her house? Jam said, no, I just used her crib as a parole site. And then Brian was like, you ever have a sexual relationship? Jam said, we hooked up once. Brian said, she's a good person. He said, yeah. He said, you told her DURK is your bitch. He said, I never said that. Brian said, you told her DURK is a hoe. Jam said, never. Brian said, by the time you got out, DURK's career is booming, but he owes you because he used your name in songs. Jam said, this makes no sense. Like, how could I be responsible? Those weren't even his biggest songs. It was only a few songs. It makes no sense. And Brian said, well, you often don't make sense, right? He was kind of snarky. I didn't think that was really that smart. It wasn't a great look. He said that you said that DURK works for you. He said, no. He said, you said you was going to get money from DURK. He said, no. And Brian still went on. He said, you're in a studio in Atlanta. You said that DURK took you and others to a private room and told you Quando Rondo has to be killed. Jam says, not exactly those words, but yeah. Brian says, the killer would be financially set for life. $1 million potentially. He said, yeah. He said, and this is all because of King Von's, excuse me, this is all because of King Von's murder. It wasn't a murder, it was a killing, by the way, Brian. Get that right. Basically, Jam said, yeah, and all of the trolling. It was not just the Von's death, but it was the trolling around it that caused the slide for Von stuff to happen. Brian said, besides your word, do you have any proof showing that DURK ever said these words? Jam said, no. Why would I have recorded him that time at the studio? I wouldn't have been doing that. Brian said, did you tell anyone that you never spoke with DURK about the $1 million bounty or Quando or Tim? And Jam said, you're confusing me. Brian said, this meeting is the truth, and it would be a lie if no meeting ever took place. All right. And he was like, kind of follow him. Brian said, when you give the cops the note about the murders and you'll be willing to speak with them, he said, you met with the feds twice. I think it was on a few times, and it included over 2 times, and it included May the 4th, May the 5th, May the 10th. He said yes. He said, you hope that you'll be so important to the case that you can be home in a year in time for your 2 kids' birth. Jam said, this is 2 different situations. This makes no sense. I had a son that was born on May 3rd, another on June 19th. Hello. Hello. You're going to come sit here. Come sit here. Come sit here. No? Come sit here. Yeah. Come sit here. Okay. He basically said that how can I think that I'm going home that quickly? It doesn't make any sense, basically. He said you thought you'd be home in a couple of months. You basically said that DURK did everything. And then he basically said that Brian Steele said those meetings weren't recorded. Jam said, well, I said no camera. Brian Steele said, well, there's no recording of meetings on the 3rd, 4th, 5th, or 10th, and then you don't meet them again until May the 24th. Sorry, there's one recorded that was on May the 23rd, and I want to play part of that recording. So he played part of a recording of Jam with 1 FBI and 2 LA detectives. And Jam basically, this is what Jam said on that recording. He said, I got questions. I went back and I was thinking, I signed something last time. You don't know if or when the LA cops are going to press charges. Now, basically, Brian Steele said, this is you speaking with the cops for the 5th time, right? You didn't want to be charged in the LA case. Jam said, it wasn't clear to me. I just wanted to know. And then Brian said, do you remember when you said about $500K to $1 million being offered as a reward? He said, play the tape. And then Jam basically said, DURK is the head of OTF. After Von died, I was in jail. I don't know what I said. I heard in jail before he was even dead. Booney Mo told me. He said Von was in surgery. Slutty got popped because of Lil Tim. He said security shot Slutty in the head. Lil Tim was on the ground waving his pipe around, and they shoot Slutty. That don't make no sense. So it's like they saying, why is Lil Tim holding a gun and the cops are shooting Slutty? They think it was Tim's involvement and he had something to do with it. And he said that Slutty was Heck and T-Roy's brother. So those are 2 very notorious O-Block assassins, allegedly. So there was an objection. Brian was allowed to continue to play the recording. He wanted to play 5 whole minutes, but I don't think we ended up hearing 5 whole minutes. Can you see this guy? Can you see this guy? What are you doing? What are you doing? Are you going to have a break? You going to... No? No? Is DURK tuna? Is DURK tuna? Yeah? You're going to wink at them? On phone them. All right. Excuse me. So anyway, right? All type of fluff on my face now. So after that, we ended up hearing him kind of breaking the situation down. Heck and T-Roy's brother. He said this was the interrogation tape was played again. He basically said that Von died near his son's birthday. He didn't talk to DURK about Von getting killed. He never spoke to him about Tim and Quando. And that was a bombshell, right? Because we're hearing here in the studio talking about, oh yeah, there was a bounty and all this kind of stuff. People are going to be straight. But he said, oh, I never heard DURK talk about Tim and Quando. We went various places and they said it's up if we see them. But he never said that there was money on Tim and Quando. He said we didn't have a personal conversation about them until after. The cop said, was there money on Tim and Quando's head? Jam said, I don't know. All right. So they basically, after that, he said, what was said? Green light. And Jam said, no, what was said was if you catch one of them, fuck them up. That's basically what was kind of said after the fact, all right? After Von died, it was if you catch one of them, fuck them up. So Brian Steele paused it. He said, this contradicted your statement. And Jam said, well, yes, but there's more to it than that. And then Brian said, there's always more to it with... This is crazy. Brian basically said that there's always more to it with you, isn't there, sir? All right? And I'm pretty sure Jam responded and said that's untoward, or maybe I misheard it, but I was thinking that's a big word for him because he talking about he don't know a bunch of other words, but it sounded like he was said, oh, that's untoward. Maybe it was uncalled for or something, all right? But Brian Steele said you denied the bounty. That contradicts your statement today. Jam said yes. He said you want to make it as bad for DURK as possible. And Jam said you made it out like that was an easy thing to do. It's not. That's not the case. And then there was a break. Now, I think Jam was probably inferring that it was like it took him a few interviews to really feel like he could be honest and tell everything, but it made him look bad, honestly. It sounded like he was caught in a lie. And Brian Steele was very careful to not let him talk for too long because he probably would have given context and explained why he had not mentioned it in that interview. So that was super interesting, all right? After that, all right, he basically went on to say explained who Slutty was. He basically said that was T-Roy's brother. All the BDs knew Slutty. He was asked the relationship. He said we was cool, friendly, and close. He was asked, you lost touch with certain people. Were you still a close, certain people? Was it still a close friend? Jam said, I was shown the video. I was told DJ Bands was there at the shooting. Brian Steele said, during the murder of Von, Slutty was murdered. So who do you hold at fault? You hold at fault Quando or Lil Tim for Slutty's murder? He said, yes. He said, you told jurors that you might murder them if you didn't murder... if you don't murder them, you'd feel bad. He said, did you feel bad about Slutty's murder? Oh, sorry, if you don't have a connection with them, you don't feel bad. He basically was sort of bringing up the point. It's like you didn't think that Von's murder needed avenging, but you thinking that... What was that? Oh. You thinking that... You thinking that... The cat just hopped up on the desk in a weird way. Give me a second. Let me just compose myself, all right? Basically saying you ain't deep in Von's murder that much. You ain't saying you got to get back for Von, but you knew Slutty well, so trying to give him motivation. Jam basically said, look, that's not how I look at it. Brian said, if we didn't have this material to view, if we didn't have this interview, we would just have your word about the bounty, right? And Jam said, look, there was more to it than what you just played. What you wanted to basically, you just played what you wanted. My mind was all over the place when that interview was going on. And Brian said, well, this was 50 minutes into the interview. And Jam said, well, what does time have to do with it? Brian said, well, you said you never spoke to DURK about Quando, Rondo, or Little Tim. You brought up that Slutty died. That meant something to you. He said, yes. He said, you had around 31 meetings with the government. He said, yes. And then after that, he basically said, well, we only have recordings of 3 times. Jam said, well, how would I realize that? I'm in jail. I'm not watching the time. Brian said, you were getting ready for this meeting. You knew what was going on. He said, yes. He said, you 100% told them everything. You knew everything, everything that you thought at the time. Come here, buddy. Come here, little bud. What are we doing? What are we doing? Are we getting in the video? Are we getting in the video? Is DURK cooked? I think he's a DURK fan. I think he's a DURK fan. I don't know what he's thought. He's going to go over that. So, basically, all right, he basically said, look, I tried my best to remember, all right, and Brian Steele said, look, the truth, all right, the truth should just come to a person. You shouldn't need to be trying to come up with different stories, contradictions. The truth should just come to you. The truth should just be there by default. And then he basically said, look, we don't know the context. And Jam said, yes. He said, if you said that this kind of didn't make sense, but he's like, if you said a plane is in the air, this is important, it has flashing lights on it, that's different to saying that, you know, did you learn anything significant a minute ago? It's like, that's very vague. You know, you looking out for something specific, or you just kind of vaguely having an idea of something. I have so much more to get through. This is crazy. So he said, look, you knew the cops wanted DURK. Jam said they wanted to know what happened, but it wasn't all about him. Brian said they discussed their interest in DURK. He said, yes, on May the 24th. He said you went back to DURK's... he said, let's go back to DURK's studio meeting. We covered it earlier. Jam said, we covered what you wanted. Brian said, well, the next part, you talked about DURK being involved. It was at 6:40 a.m. on August the 18th, 2022. You're in Chicago that morning. He said, yes. He said, lock in on that. He said, you got a call from Booney Mo. You don't get along? He said, back then we was perfectly fine. Brian said, well, this was the day of the flight. You claimed that the call from Booney Mo was completely out of blue. You said you could hear DURK on another phone. His voice could be heard. He said, yeah. He said, nothing is said about murder. He just asked if you could go to California. He said, yeah. He said, you remember the convo so well, and you had 2 people in the car with you. Jam said, my BM was in the car. We was dropping my son off to soccer practice. Brian said, you was driving with your wife and your son. Jam said, well, I can't remember. I just don't know the time. Like, is a whatever. You know, he was sort of like unsure, but vaguely familiar. Brian said, well, the phone records say that the call happened. She's driving. Where did you go to in the car? He was saying, oh, maybe my baby mama's crib. Brian says, how long is the trip? He said, I don't know. He said, are you sure you heard DURK's voice? Jam said, yeah, my wife was there. Brian said, did the authorities ever ask your wife if she heard DURK's voice? He said, I don't know. He said, why didn't the cops ask your wife? Jam said, that's not my job. Brian said, it's kind of is your job if you want to be believed. Jam said, well, I can't tell the feds how to do their job. Brian said, well, could you remember Booney Mo? Oh, sorry, could you remember Booney Mo's number? Jam said, I don't know, like, I'm not good with numbers. Brian said, well, we want to show a document to prosecutors. Do you recognize Booney Mo's number here? And he said, yes, he did. He said, when Booney's number calls you, that was right after you called him 2 times. Now, that was crazy, like a mic drop moment, all right? That was like, wait, you talking about you was caught off guard? But Booney Mo, like, you tried to call Booney Mo 2 times before that? Jam said, I don't remember that, but okay. Brian said, you called him twice and he didn't answer. So the call didn't come out the blue. You were trying to reach him. Explain how that means it was out of the blue. Jam said, I said it came out of the blue. What he asked me came out of the blue. When he called back and he asked me what the assignment, excuse me, he said, I don't remember calling him, but him telling me to go to Cali was out the blue. Brian said, William Malcolm, your cousin Chris, all right? That's the same person. They call him cousin Chris, but his name's William Malcolm. They said, you used to commit crimes with him. He said, yes. He's violent. Yes. He tries to be like you. Jam said, we don't try to be like each other. Brian said, well, that's just how you all are. All right, that was a little bit crazy. Jam said, true. Brian said, do you remember calling Chris about, do you have Quando's location? He said, no. And I'm thinking, ooh, it's getting spicy now, okay? Brian said, well, you got DMs from people about having Quando's location. He said, yes. He said, because they knew you wanted to hunt him down. He said, no. He said, you testified the killing of King Von was meaningless to you. All right? And he said, yes. And they said, but Slutty's death was meaningful. He said, Slutty... So he said, Brian still said Slatty by accident, but he did correct himself to Slutty. He said, why are you getting sent Quando Rondo's location? And Jam said, well, a girl told me she had it and sent it, and then I asked her what's her name and stuff. It was random, not like these, not like where Quando Rondo was, just random. He seemed to be inferring that it might have been a real location. And Brian said, what, some random person sent you the location of Quando? And Jam said, it happens all the time. It happened to other people too. Did you talk to Chris about killing Quando Rondo? And he said, look, I don't know. Brian said, later you speak to Jason. He said, yes. He works for DURK with Cuz. He said, I don't know. He said, well, they both work with DURK. He said, yes. He said, you gave, not Booney, you gave your violent cousin Chris the info to get a plane ticket to California. He said, yes. He said, why? He said, Booney said, see if you can get crazy to come. I guess that's the nickname, all right? Or Chris, maybe I read that wrong, but I wrote crazy. Brian Steele said, well, you didn't say before. Jam said, well, even if I didn't say it before, that is it. Brian said, you invited one of the most dangerous people on earth. Now, look, I ain't seen no evidence cousin Chris did jack shit in this case, all right? You talking about you invited one of the most dangerous people on earth. Jam said, look, we was never getting told we was getting guys to do murder. We was having to just come out for Cali for something. Brian said, well, if you brought it up in recordings, let's play it, all right? And Jam said, hey, look, check this out, all right? He said, when I'm doing interviews, I don't know when or where they record. Brian says, well, the interviews is all we have. And Jam says, well, is that on me? And Brian says, well, it is now. He said, it's just your word against DURK's. On the Booney call, saying that DURK was on the call, we have no backup from your wife. We got no proof. Jam said, well, look, when that situation was going on, I see the picture you're trying to paint here. That's what you're getting paid for. But when you're nervous about doing something, you can't remember every single decision. Brian said, you called Booney first, though. It was on paper. Jam said, I see it. Brian said, does the phone company have an agenda? Jam said, no. He said, but you do. He said, yes. Jam said, nothing was promised to me. The judge can still give me life if he wants to. Brian says, well, you got something riding on this? Said, yes. Brian said, you said that Quando Rondo was greenlit. If anyone caught him, fuck him up. That was you. You knew that before San Diego. You would do it, and that's what you do. You do this type of stuff. Jam said, that's not what I do. It's what I've done. Brian said, why would anyone believe that the violence is gone? And there was an objection to that. It was sustained, so we had to move on. Brian then said the plan was violence and death. Jam said it could be. Brian said, that was your mission. Jam said, well, that was a comment about the understanding of the group. That wasn't my daily agenda. Brian said, it was on the 18th and 19th. He said, nah. He said, there's nothing about your word that DURK was, there's nothing but your word that DURK was on the call. He said, yes. He said, it's you. He said, yes. Brian said, your wife takes you to the airport to fly to San Diego and you go to Hooters. Jam said, I made a call first. Brian says, you later met Cuz. He said, eventually. He said, you knew Cuz was close to Von like Slutty. And Jam says, well, how am I going to know that? I was locked up for 12 years. I met Vonnie after Von died. I had no idea how close Cuz was to Von. And then Brian says, well, you get in the Sprinter. He says, yes. He said, you saw DURK on FaceTime. There was the mention of the Navy SEALs. You spoke to DURK. You did a gang sign. And then Jam said, I slammed the rakes. And then he said, actually, like, Dee is the one who said who said go crazy. Now, look, it sounded earlier in the day, and when I talked about this, that Dirk had said, hey, go crazy. But he said that it was Dee to Brian. He said it was Dee was the one that said go crazy. Apparently, seems like Dirk didn't say anything in that case. This time he told the story, which I thought was quite interesting. So, I've got the jittery video again. We have the jittery video sometime. That crystal clear 4K. Ooh. All right. So he basically said, let's play more interviews, all right? You left out the Navy SEAL comment. You said that Dirk said it. And he said, no, Dee said Navy SEALs, but okay. And Brian said, well, okay, then you're in the LA in the BMW. You were there to get into action and kill Quando. And Jam said, well, not right into action. Otherwise, we'd have killed him at the hotel then and there on the first night. You're acting like I would have just killed Quando Rondo as soon as I saw him. And that's not what happened. We was preparing. Brian says, you don't want to be held accountable or be caught. Jam said, I gave them the cops murders they didn't even know about. And Brian said, well, you didn't want to be caught by cops in killing Quando at the hotel. He said, true. Jam said that he apparently had a little walk at the hotel. He never booked the flights. Brian said, did you ever think of asking for help in the hotel lobby to like book a flight home and get out of there? And Jam was like, bro, listen to yourself. Listen to what you just asked me, bro. Can anyone just go into a hotel lobby and just ask a random person for help booking a flight? Like, it's not really a thing. And then Brian just kept sort of saying like, oh, you were there for murder. And Jam said, look, I saw Quando and I didn't kill him that first night, so how do you know what I was there for? And Brian said, well, you were there preparing to murder. He said, true. He said, you and Vonnie were driving around in the BMW. He said, yes. He said, you spend hours from the morning to 5:30 p.m. in a full day doing this. Your sole purpose is to kill a person. He said, yes, right? So after that, Brian said, you were followed by cell phones, this location to this street. He said, yes. He said, eventually it was time to strike. We see you with a gun. You pointed at humans in the car. No one made you pull the trigger. He said, nah. He said, you decided to kill. And Jam said, look, I didn't know I was going to kill him. I didn't blow his brains out. All right. I didn't walk up to him. Brian said, well, you did that before. It was kind of snarky. I'm not going to lie to you. And then Jam said, look, you wouldn't know about any of this if I didn't tell you. And then Brian said, well, no one made you. You didn't know who was in the car. If a random might have been hit by a ricochet. And he said, yeah. He said, bullets don't have eyes or names. And I didn't think it was a good idea, but I still did it, which was interesting. So after that, Brian Steele said, you didn't think it was a bad idea either. Jam said, well, if that's how you put it, I have my opinion, you have yours. I feel like I tried to stop it. Otherwise, if I didn't, we would have been on trial for my murder. You get paid for all of this defense, so I understand. He kept saying little slick comments like that. He was clapping back. And then Brian basically said, why do you think people should die so you can live? There was an objection to that. The judge said, we're veering in philosophy. Can we go back to the car? He said, well, you ran back to the car. And Jam said, well, obviously, I wouldn't just... You should just sit somewhere cute and just stay there and just be in the video. You be coming and going and you be finessing fools. You don't need to show your butt. You don't need to be a booty shaker like some of these alleged people. He said, obviously, I wouldn't just stand there. And Brian said, well, you know what to do, right? Mr. Minister, this is what you do. You're different. And Jam laughed. He said, I'm different for sure. Then he pointed at Dee. He said, Dee a minister too. All right. I thought that was kind of funny. So Brian said, well, you're a professional. And Jam said, we're not professionals. We're just paying attention to the situation. Brian said, your goal is to avoid custody. Jam said, come on, man. You want to be in jail? And then Brian said, well, Dirk was on FaceTime after the hit. You said he was smiling, asking about how many bullets fired. And Jam was like, I don't think I said that he smiled. Some people in the courtroom whispered at that point. Yeah, he actually did. Now, Brian said, was he on FaceTime after the PAB hit, asking about the rounds fired, like you said? And Jam basically said, look, that happened, but you're actually blending together two separate things. There were multiple steps. He said that Blood was on the phone when we switched cars. He was not at the in and out. He basically said, Brian said, well, while you were getting rid of the guns and the cars, he said, we ditched the guns and the cars, got in Cuz's car, and Dirk was on the phone. And then at the in and out, later on, Dirk was on the phone separately. He said that Grant, Dee, Boogie, Flocker, and Lindsay was all in the car, and Dirk was on FaceTime. Brian said, do you have proof of this? He said, no. He said at the in and out, did you say Dirk was on FaceTime? He said, that's when I saw him. He said that's when you saw him and threw the gang sign. He said, I never said I threw a gang sign. And then Brian said, well, is there proof? Unless the phones were tapped, there's not going to be any proof, right? No, my bad. Brian said, is there proof? And Jam said, unless the phones were tapped, there's not going to be any proof. Brian said, well, that would have been great, right? That's very ironic for him to say that. And then he said, after that, you cowardly ran to Chicago, right? And then basically that was objected to and it was sustained, but then Jam stood on business. He was like, you called me cowardly? And then Brian said, you are a coward. You shot people with a gun. And then Jam clapped back. He was like, yeah, I beat people up too. And then Brian said, well, back to the 19th and 20th. He said, you got DURK on the phone upset because you sent you on a sloppy mission. You don't want to get caught. So when you're saying when you kill, it's got to be perfect. Apparently Jam clapped back to that as well. All right. He basically said, that's not what I was saying. He said, more to me, it was a sloppy hit. Why, after I did all of that time, you called me? Stop trying to put it your way, is what he said to Brian Steele. Brian then clapped back. He said, well, all of this is based just on your word. He said, yes. He said, do you deny that you were boasting about what you did in LA, cheering, taking victory laps? Did you say that it was great, but you're going back for Quando? He said, no. Jam said, well, we wasn't popping bottles or smoking weed, celebrating like that. That's not what was going on. Getting a little reprieve right now. He said, that's not what was going on. Brian said, well, you're Jam, right? Your sister's name's Jilly. He said, did you ever, is it true that you once said that JAM stood for just another murder? And Jam kind of like smirked and he was sort of like, I'd never heard that ever. But when I was younger, that's probably something I would have used, to be honest with you. Brian said, when I asked you about every part of the story where DURK was involved, he basically said, look, I've now asked you about every part of the story where DURK was involved. Right? He said Jam said there's other stuff too, but you're going to be hearing that from other people after me. And Brian said, what, Vonnie and Jones, aka Flocker? He said, you and Flock go back to 2008, right? And Jam was like, well, we met in jail. And probably, he said, that's a trick question. We known each other since like age 14 or 15. But we didn't go all the way back. We didn't know each other well back then. We only became friends like 15, 16 years later on the outside. And he said, Brian said, you're saying you like him? And Jam was like, this was so weird. Jam was like, hey, you saying I like him? Like, something else? Like, what? And then he was like, he cool? Are you saying I like him? Like, he cool. He said, we actually got into it once in jail, and that's actually how we ended up becoming friends. And Brian said, well, you see him after custody. He's one of the people testifying. And now you're teaming up with Flocker not to snitch, but to testify. And Jam said, well, look, we ain't no teaming up, all right? We both cooperated separately. And then Brian said, so your stories should line up. That was the end of the day. Left it on a very, very dramatic note. It was crazy. Okay, so there was a bit of housekeeping at the end, but it wasn't that interesting. I'm not going to get into it because I'm finding that stuff is just sort of not really being super interesting. But that was everything from the courthouse today. Shout out everybody that pulled up. Look at this verbal right here. I'm just going to hold this little cat. It was a crazy day, man. It was a long day. I'm getting super tired. I'm low-key excited for the weekend, but there's a lot going on. So I'm going to keep you guys informed. I'm going to keep the coverage as fair and as honest and as unbiased as I possibly can. I'm only human. I do get things wrong. I apologize if I've made some mistakes. I'm writing the notes as quickly as I can. Sometimes there's typos. Sometimes I miss things. And
Okay, chat. Now we're gonna get into. Wait, hold on. We gotta go back to trap. We gotta go back to trap. Chat, what's going on with y'all, man? Chat, I'm right here. What's going on, bud? Man, let me see what else we about to get into. Hold on, y'all. Gonna find us something. We about to get into another episode of the Lil Durk situation. How long we been streaming already, chat? Oh, okay. We already an hour in. Okay. Here I come, chat. All right, chat. Here we go. Here we go. Hmm. Let me see. Hey, hold on. Now where to go? I just seen it, y'all. Hold on, chat. Okay, I found my boy Trap. Okay, we just watched day two. Uh, we just watched OTF Jam day two. For testimony. Now, what's on the menu? Let me see. What's on the menu? What's on the menu? I guess we can't go too far down chat, to be honest, because we can't go too far down because of the fact that what we just watched. We can't go too far down just because of the fact of what we watched. So yeah, we can't go too far back. Like my chat said, we can't go too far back after we just watched that. Uh, the testimony joint. All right, so what we gotta do is now we about to watch the other testimony part of him. His other little testimony part right here. So we'll get into his other little testimony part. The testimony before this one. Like my chat said, we gotta go to the one that's before this one for me. The video he dropped before this one. Yeah, so we have to go back to we can't just go to how it's lined up like this. Wait, let me show y'all. I forgot y'all can't see. I forgot y'all can't see. My bad. Let me show y'all. I mean, show you. I forgot you can't see. Hold on. Forgot you can't see. Okay, so what I'm saying is we can't just go like how we watched this already and then go to this and then this and then this and then this. Nope, we gotta go right here to the testimony part.
Oh my.
Now, this the testimony. Before the testimony, we just watched chat. Sorry if my voice sounded a little like raspy or whatever. So basically, we gotta watch this one, the testimony before the first one. But um, but let's get into it. Trying to get back into algaes. I'm trying to get back into algae really. It took me out the algorithm chat. Get me back in the algorithm chat. I'll get them random views up. Get me back in the algorithm. Get me back in the algorithm chat. For real, I'm so serious. I'm so serious, bro. Get me back in the algorithm. Man, I just don't know how serious I am. I'm serious, hard time. And this probably gonna be another sleep stream. I ain't gonna lie, y'all. Okay, so next step. What are we doing? What are we doing? Okay, we about to watch this. And I'm probably gonna go to sleep on y'all while we watch this. I'm not gonna even lie. I'm probably gonna go to sleep on y'all while we watch this. That's why this just turned into a sleep stream. This just turned into a sleep stream and all that and all that. This just turned into a sleep stream and all that and all that. Okay, let's get into it, chat. I'm actually like taking up too much on the screen. Right there is perfect. Don't be afraid of the way you feel. Let me see how I look. I should be smaller though now. Don't be afraid of the way you feel. Come on. I've been went back to trap, man. Make trap pop up. So let's see what's going on. Okay, okay, that's decent. That's decent right there. I know it's the brightness though on this though too. See that brightness on that joint. That joint bright. You know, some shit like that or something. What about I changed the light color though? I changed the light color though. See, you didn't even notice. See, ooh, that's that drone right there. Okay, let's get into it. Trap more Ross.
God, it is crazy. So look,
Shout out Trap more Ross for the clarity of the content that he got. His content be so clear, like the viewing of it. Um, we always fully understand what he talking about. I love the accent. Just shout out to Trap more Ross, man. Let's get into it.
I know what you're all here for, and we're just going to get straight to it. All right, OTF Jam took the stand. I've got all of my notes from court today, but I'm certain that you guys don't care about what was going on with the detective, what was going on with Brian Steele grilling him, what was going on with me getting screamed at in the hallway. I know you guys just want Jam. All right, you guys want Jam, and I'm going to give you all of the Jam testimony. Now, obviously, I'm sure transcripts will come out eventually. People will cross-reference. And look, I'm not saying that I am the perfect note taker in the world. There might be some small mistakes, some small misquotes in this video. I apologize if that's the case. I wrote down everything I possibly could as quickly as possible, and this is the closest thing you're going to get to a transcript at this point in time. All right? I'm doing my best, okay? Sorry if people are upset about that, but it is what it is, okay? Jam did testify in the second half of the day after lunch. It was absolutely insane. They tried to get me thrown out of the courtroom. They lied and said that I was wearing Meta glasses. Now, if you know me and you know my channel, maybe these glasses look a bit chunky around the corner, but these are not Meta glasses. These are the same octagonal lenses that I've been wearing for years. Where are they even from? I forgot where these are from. They're from Catch London, all right? Arnold Circus Grey 28 lenses, all right, or frames. No Meta glasses going on here. A bunch of people tried to lie. They tried to snitch on me. I couldn't believe it. I felt for smirk. They were snitching on me. They tried to get me kicked out of the courtroom, but it didn't work. And I know that the DURK stands are fuming, all right? Because I got all the goods, and I saw DURK get fucking cooked. Jam absolutely went crazy. He went ballistic on that stand, okay? So let's get into it, all right? Let's just get into it. I've got so many you won't believe everything Jam said, and I'm going to tell you absolutely everything that he said. There were moments where I felt sympathetic. There were moments that people were probably angry at him, but here it is. They brought out Jam, all right? It was freaking crazy. They brought out Jam, and the first thing they said, all right, they basically said, before Jam hit the stand, they said, look, we're going to have cooperators coming in to testify, all right? You got to treat them like you would any other witness. They are in custody. They're not wearing suits, but the judge said you got to treat them like any other witnesses. And while this was going on, DURK was kind of like swiveling in his chair, like he was nervous as hell, all right? He put on a fake smile when he spoke to his lawyer, like he was acting like he wasn't just about to get absolutely deep, battered, and fried. It was... Oh, I would not want to be DURK today. It was an absolutely awful day. I was getting a hard time in court, but it wasn't a shred on what DURK was going through. Absolute cookout was going on. So they brought in Jam, all right? DURK looked back at Jam, and it was weird because they sort of brought Jam. I thought Jam was going to come out from behind the judge, and it's like they brought Jam past, but then they kind of tucked him away. It's like, imagine like, I don't know, almost like a stage.
All right, Trap, you ain't got to do my boy like that, man. I ain't gonna lie, man. I know it was a cooking season for him today. Well, yesterday. 'Cause it's a new day. It's 5 o'clock in the morning for me, chat. But, Trap, don't do my boy like that, man. For real, man. Free DURK, free Smirk. You know, he is a Libra. His birthday, October 19th. Same day as mine. You know, but, come on, Trap, man. Shout out Trap, man. Like I said, y'all go like, comment, subscribe on his channel. Subscribe on my channel. Make sure y'all sub up, man. You know, I'm gonna try to keep the great content coming, you know, and I'm gonna try to stay up to date with Trap More Ross on the content and DJ Act. Y'all know I've been getting it from Act too. But yeah, man. Shout out Trap, man. Trap, man. Look, man. Don't be speaking up on my boy like that, man. Real talk, man. That boy's a Libra, man. Don't be speaking up on my boy like that, man.
Like, you know, it's like a podium, but there's gaps on either side of it. So we kind of saw Jam walk past and then back behind it. DURK looked around and saw Jam, caught a glimpse of him, and then he disappeared again. So you could tell his heart was probably beating through his chest. So Jam came out, all right? Dirk looked right at Jam and then looked down. Jam looked right back at Dirk. It seemed to me like they locked eyes, and the rest was history, man. Dirk was looking down. He was looking defeated. It was a tough day for him. So the first thing they said, or I wrote down pretty much everything that Jam said. All right, the prosecution asked him, you pled guilty to federal crimes. What were those crimes? And apologies if I've got some of the wording on this wrong. I'm not perfect. I'm writing all these notes by hand. My fingers are sore. I have literal calluses. I've got a big sore callus on my thumb where I'm holding the pen. But I'm going hard for you guys to get you as much info. So if any of this is slightly wrong, I apologize. This is all alleged, and this is Jam's testimony, okay? I'm not going to have Dirk's team screaming in my face again. Not having that, all right? Very unprofessional. But anyway... He said, I've pled guilty to federal crimes of conspiracy to commit murder for hire, kidnap for murder, and robbery murder. 3 murders. He copped out to 3 murders for his deal. Jam get out that jam by copping to 3 murders. He identified himself in the footage. They showed the footage of the hit on Lil Pab, and he said, what do you see? He said, I see me. That's me with the red and white Prada shoes. No, I thought they were Jordans, but turns out they were Prada shoes. I guess Dirk did get Jam right after all with the Prada steppers on. It's crazy. All right. The prosecutor said to Jam, do you see anyone else who participated in that murder in this courtroom today? He said, yes. He said, Dirk, Dee Dee, and Lil CVL Shorty, right? David Lindsay. But he was like, I didn't know the guy's name. I just knew him. He was a shorty from CVL. It's another set in Chicago. Pointed them all out. Boom, boom, boom. Oh my God, it was savage. It was savage. Anybody else who participated in this murder? Yes. Dirk. D. I could not believe it. I could believe it because I've known about this for years. But I basically, it was crazy to actually see what we all knew, what we've known is coming for years to actually happen in front of our faces. Absolute insanity. So after that, they basically said, you were targeting, were you targeting Lil Pab, Savia Robinson, the person that got killed? They said, Jam said, no, we were targeting Quando Rondo. It was meant to be a revenge killing for King Von being killed. And so then it was time to take everybody back, all right, back in history, back to the past, back to the block of Chicago where he basically told the whole story. He said he's from Southside Chicago, Inglewood. He's lived there his whole life and he's 34 years old now. He was involved in the gang, the Black Disciples. And I'm not going to lie to you, when this was going on, I made a note. Drew Findling had his head in his hands. I think it might be over with, but it depends. If Brian Steele can clap back and do a good argument, it's going to be great, but I'm not sure. So he basically explained the blocks and the cliques that he was involved in. He said he was Lamron 300. Lamron 300. He said he got blessed in the Lamron Black Disciples when he was age 9. Dirk looked pissed. Dirk swiveling in his chair like he looked fuming. He looked fuming, all right? Because he hates rats. All rats must die. I hate rats. I hate rats. Well, maybe you shouldn't have expected that somebody was going to value your freedom over theirs, all right? That was a dumb... I said that to somebody in the courtroom. They were like, I can't believe in it. I was like, I kind of can, because it's like Dirk thinking his freedom's worth more than Jam's. Jam wants his freedom. 50,000? I said to someone in the court, I said, would you take 50,000 to never be free again in your life? Bro, it ain't worth... It's priceless, all right? I don't abide by the street code. I'm not a gangster, so I can't abide by these ridiculous street codes that you're going to go down and just be solid. So Drew's got his head in his hands. He said, I became a Black Disciple leader. He said stuff about the Black Disciple leadership structure I'd never heard before in my life. He said, I became a minister in the Black Disciples, the BD and the Black Disciple Nation, and it came with a lot of authority. He said that meant I can direct younger members. And they said, how do you rise through the ranks? He said, you can rise through the ranks different ways. They said you can rise through money. They said you can rise through inheriting power from your family, your relatives, if you're, you know what I'm saying? Hang on. How can I turn that off? Why is that coming through my computer? That's odd. I don't even have a device that would be making that sort of noise. So anyway, in addition to that, all right, we basically then heard, okay, that he said, I rose to power in the Black Disciples through violence. He said Lamron and 300 is the same thing. He said 300. I'd never heard this before. They said, where does 300 come from? This is the first time Dirk's whole gang affiliations got blown wide open, right? He blew the back doors wide open on this situation. He said 300, it comes from the movie 300. We never back down. Lamron never backed down. Lamron will never back down like the Spartans, all right? And when he said that, Dirk gritted his teeth. Dirk was like, he grimaced, all right? He said, Lamron 300, we the Spartans, we never back down. Bro, I ain't never heard no Chiracology, no nothing talking about that before. Jesus Christ. This is going to be a long video. They said, how does the Black Disciples work? He said, we had regular gang meetings where Dirk and Dee Dee participated. They had Black Disciple Nation business. They had regular Black Disciple meetings every Friday. But also, if something went down, we would have an emergency BD meeting, depending on the situation. They said that sometimes there'd be other BD cliques. Lamron 300 was its own clique, but sometimes other BD cliques would be convened for these meetings. If there was beef between the cliques, they might meet up and try and squash it. He said, explained some slang. He said, get into it means beefing with each other. He basically said that murders could be discussed at those meetings. You might discuss, gangs and cliques that are into it with each other beefing. He said, I took an oath to the BDs to get blessed in. Bro, people talking about, OTF, it's just some music shit. It's not some mafia or John Gotti shit. This ain't a mafia trial. They sounded like the mob. And Dirk said in that song, what is it? Went Hollywood for a year. We ain't moving like no street N-words. We moving like the mob. Apparently they were. Jam said, I took an oath when I was blessed into the BDs and I got to abide by 3 laws. I have to sacrifice my life for the nation causes. I have to abide all commands of kings and chiefs. And when he said that, I went, whoa. I have to abide all commands of kings and chiefs? Well, like King Von? Well, like Chief Wook? Well, like Chief Keef? Kings and Chief? Oh. Kings and Chiefs. King Von. King David on King David. It's all making sense. I ain't never heard none of this about the BDs before. Insane. He letting the nation business be known. And number 3 said, I will salute all members of the BDs with a clutched hand and a clenched fist. He said he put his life on the line for the BDs. That's what he signed up for. He said the BDs don't tolerate no disrespect. To be a BD, you got to be loyal and trustworthy to your brothers. They said you got to be able to count on other BDs. When people go to jail and cooperate, you got to count on each other. You must never testify against other members. Clearly, he ain't banging BD no more. He explained get back is when you get revenge for somebody that's killed or shot your homie. He said that's the same as getting your lick back. It's known in the community, in the streets. It's known. If you get your lick back, it's known. He said if you don't get back, you look like a weak block. If you don't get back and you let people just kill people from your block and you don't get back, you get preyed on. He said older Black disciples push the issue. Even your family can discipline you if you don't get back. He's saying mothers and grandmothers be getting mad if their kids don't receive get back after they're killed. He said get back is pushed for harder, for more important members, and the get back dictates the strength of the block. He said the BDs take respect very seriously. He said if you're a leader, you want people to respect you. If you don't maintain respect, then you can become a target. Not every BD is a shooter. You can be a money getter, a drug dealer, a scammer, or a fighter. Not everyone is a killer. But Jam, he got his respect as a shooter, and he had a big reputation for violence. He said that he shot his first person at age 12. It was on Halloween. All right? And how many times have we heard that King Von lyric where you're talking about dudes getting shot all October, the real Halloween? They're saying Von caught a body around Halloween. I would not want to be in the south side of Chicago anytime around Halloween. Okay? Absolute insanity. Bro, crazy. All right? Absolutely crazy. Hang on. So Jam said that the first shooting that he ever committed was apparently in his hood when somebody rolled through and hit an older guy in the face with a paintball gun. Jam and his cousin Chris basically were told by an older guy they were handed guns and said when the car comes back, shoot it up, all right? And they did exactly that and somebody got hit. He was just 12 years old when he was getting busy. He'd already been blessed into the BDs. 3 years into the BDs, he's doing his first shooting. Between the ages of 12 and 18, Jam was apparently involved in 10 to 15 shootings as well as many armed robberies. They said, are you a strong arm robber or an armed robber? He said armed robberies with guns. He said he did a whole lot of robberies. They said how many? He was like 100 plus. He said mostly drug dealers. They said, did you ever rob anyone for anything other than drugs? He said one time. And this made me actually feel bad for Jam. They said, what happened? He said there was one time when I was younger, I did an armed robbery with a gun for food. I robbed somebody for food. He said my parents were drug addicts and I had to pay the bills and step up to the plate at age 12. That's when I started getting into the armed robberies. I needed to make some money. One time I had to literally stick someone up for food to put in my stomach. He said that when it comes to having a name in the streets, that's having respect. He said getting money, being a shooter, having respect. You can have a name in the streets for various things, and he was a shooter. He then outlined his first murder. He said in 2010, he was in a robbery in Racine, Wisconsin with another BD. They asked him to rob somebody that their father had dealt drugs with. Apparently things had gone wrong. The BD said that this guy had cheated his pops out of money, so he was sent to be part of a robbery. They went into the store, they locked the door, and they put the guns to the guy in there. There was a fight happened, and Jam was told to shoot him. Jam shot him once, and then the guy said, no, he's seen my face, kill him. Jam then put a gun to that person's head and pulled the trigger and executed them. He was just age 17. So when Jam was arrested in 2023 after the Lil Pabs murder, Jam confessed to this crime and he pled guilty after speaking to the FBI. He explained that he knew DURK for years. He'd first met him on Normal Ave, Lamron, okay, around 2007 to 2008 when he was aged about 14 or 15. He was already popping people in the streets. He said he knew DURK was a BD from Lamron 300. He said DURK was at the BD meetings. He was at parties, all right? And after Jam got out of jail at one point, he saw DURK around. He saw him doing the Lamron handshake. He knew that he was blessed in. Jam explained that he has many gang tattoos. He said he got tattoos of 2-Fo, 1-Fo, BDN, Black Disciple Nation, 300, Lamron, and he's even got an OTF tattoo. He explained some of the BD hand signs that they do. They showed that picture that I told you before that was DURK and DD together. DURK's doing the Die Y hand sign. They said this was from the Block is Hot music video. He said, what's going on here? He said, that's DURK dropping the Ys. And then there was another hand in the corner. He said, that's someone slamming the rakes. They said, I do hand signs to diss their ops. And it was funny because Brian still kept objecting. And the judge was like, bro, overall, sharp. Like, Brian's still like, objection, objection. Anytime gangs were brought up, he's like, objection. And the judge is like, no, we're allowed to bring up gangs for limited purposes. It's been established. So no. All right. Brian still was having a bad time. He had a good morning, but this was a very, very bad afternoon for Brian Steele. So after that, all right, we basically kind of saw it go from there, that he said, Brian still tried to object to stop Jam from talking about 051 Young Money and the gang signs. Overruled, the judge let him talk, and Jam said, dropping Ys is a diss to 051 Young Money. They do a Y sign. We drop it upside down to disrespect them. They're ops of the BDs. They killed a lot of important people. They said that the rakes is dropping the GD hand sign, right? The pitchforks. Gangster Disciples and GDs and BDs. The prosecution said they're kind of like Bloods and Crips in LA. And then Brian Steele, objection! The judge said, overruled. This is a Los Angeles audience. They're going to get the comparison to Bloods and Crips. I'll allow it. Jam said, yes. It's like the Bloods and the BDs and the GDs, like the Bloods and Crips in Chicago. And I've been saying that for years. You all want to talk about like I don't know what I'm talking about. They said they played a video of DURK and the whole gang at a street sign. It was the Taytown 59th and Princeton sign. It's probably a video that you've seen on social media where DURK's just surrounded by Black Disciples on Taytown and he doing a gang sign. I didn't know this. He was doing this sign. We've seen DURK throw up this sign quite a few times, all right? It's like some shit DURK be doing, all right? I don't know if is it like that? Is it like that? Hang on, let me check. So it's looking like this sign, all right? He kind of be doing that or that. And apparently that's the OTF gang sign. Now, I never really clocked that. I've seen DURK doing that a bunch of times. Sort of this thing or this thing. That's a crazy picture to choose. But apparently that's the OTF gang sign. Jam said he was throwing OTF. All right. Apparently there's a separate sign that they do for Von. We didn't see that getting pointed out, but I've just seen a image of DURK doing a sign that could well be the Von hand sign. I'd never seen this before, but there was apparently another OTF gang sign, which I hadn't seen this one before. That's low-key fly. Yeah, there was another one. Okay, I can't actually find that picture, but it was basically DURK kind of doing this, which I thought could have been the Von hand sign because it's making a V, but it's also an O block by the side if you do it that way. I'm not exactly sure, but anyway, he basically testified that it was like that this one or this one was like the OTF hand sign. It was one of the OTF hand signs that was apparently known. So that was kind of very, very interesting. They asked if anyone was throwing the King Von hand sign, and Jam actually said, I can't see anyone doing the Von hand sign right now. But he said that the King Von hand sign basically only existed after Jam got out of jail. He didn't know about it. And they basically said, like, OTF is only the family. He explained what that was. He said that Lamron gang members had been saying OTF years ago, but it never took off. He said OTF was just another name of Lamron when they were kids, but it never took off until DURK popularized it with his music. They said DURK, Chief Keef, and Rondo No. 9 popularized the phrase only the family, but it was just another phrase for Lamron 300. He said they all claimed OTF. All right, they were kind of all showing love to OTF. Obviously, when you know the whole story now, Chief Keef hates OTF. Right, he's probably loving all of these updates. If Chief Keef's watching this one, come on, man, shout out Sosa. But anyway, the judge basically went on to kind of make some clarifications to the jury. Said, look, the reason that you're hearing all of this is to show the motive for the alleged conspiracy. It's not a gang murder, but we're basically giving you the backstory as to why they might have wanted to slide for Von. So after that, the prosecution showed a picture of Dee Dee wearing the V-Roy chain. Jam explained that V-Roy was King Von's nickname because his best friend was T-Roy, who got killed, and V-Roy was a tribute to T-Roy. It was a Chiracology history lesson, bro. All of the stuff that you know and heard and seen in all my videos, realistically, right? It was all put up there by somebody that was involved and confirmed that it was real. So anyway, all right, they showed the image of Dee Dee wearing the Tay-Town. He had this Tay-Town 2-time sweatshirt on, which I've pointed out in a previous video. Like, bro, this is why I thought that, like, Dee Dee's lawyer was maybe fumbling a little bit, because it's like he kept kind of bringing attention to certain things. Like, he kept showing this picture of Dee Dee in this Tay-Town 2-time shirt. Nobody's brought attention to the fact that, like, that 2 times is like, what did you do 2 times? What did you do 2 times? But anyway, they showed in front of Jam, all right, the whole video of Dee Dee walking through Tay-Town, where he's saying, I need a lineup, you know, I ain't gonna lie. Let me pull it up. They played this whole video in its entirety, okay? Now, I won't play the whole video, but obviously he wearing this Tay-Time 2-time sweatshirt, and he basically says, they saying I'm the murder man, all right? He with all the gang, imagine this, right? Jam is, look, I'm just gonna be real with you, right? No one else gonna be as honest with you as I am about this case. This whole thing got played in its entirety, and the whole time Jam was shaking his head and smiling and laughing. All right, people were talking about Jam was shaking his head. He looked sad. Jam was shaking his head and smiling and laughing, thinking, what an absolute dummy for putting this out there. I'll play the whole thing. Fuck it. Where's the sound?
You got the Drake. That's a song, by the way, man. Take shit out of context. Y'all, that's weird.
Bear in mind, Jam's looking at all this, just being like,
what's up?
I'm gonna do what Jam did.
Here go HB right here. HB, just join. Fuck you, HB. I swear, you ain't even pop out. There go the members right there, though. You know where we at. You know where we at, HB. Got my boy Jerry in the trenches. Show me how you really feel. Yo. Put that stitch cord on your ass. I'm gonna spank your ass like fucking Elroy did that ass. They talking about DD murder man for sure. That cool. Somebody roll up with me, man.
Oh, it's not you. It's not.
Roll up.
He is. It's 214.
Roll up, man. Somebody, do not come on my live saying no goofy shit. Go ahead and troll somebody else, clown. Straight up. Baby threat, how you coming? They say what baby threat there. It's a lot of them out here, but
Yeah, so Jam was shaking his head and sort of chuckling at this. So look, I've shown you guys that video in a previous video, but basically they played the entire thing. It was quite long. It was quite excruciating. Jam kind of chuckled and shook his head through the whole thing. It was surreal. After that, Jam basically confirmed, yeah, that video was taken in Tay-Town. Those guys with him were BD gang members. When he says pop out, it means come outside for whatever. They said it could mean come kick it if you're gang members, or it could mean inviting the ops outside for a confrontation. However you want to choose it, you could use that phrase. They said, what does send that low mean? He said, it means show us where you're at. He said Dee Dee was a leader in Tay-Town. They're saying that, so Jam moved on. He said, I got out of prison at the end of February 2022. All right. And basically he said that, you know, he was in jail basically from the age of 18 to 2022. He was locked up for many years. You know, obviously he's, what is he? Is that making sense? He was 34 when he took the stand. Wait, is that making sense? He was 34 when he took the stand, and then he came out 4 years ago, so he'd have been 30. So that sort of would suggest he did like roughly 12 years in jail. I could be wrong because my notes on that were a little bit iffy. But basically, he did years and years and years and years in jail. Okay, so that video of Dee Dee on the block was after Jam got out. He said that Tay-Town as a gang or a set or a clique didn't even exist when he went to jail, and he said that he knew that that was a recent video because some of the clothes that people were wearing were clothes that he didn't know, like clothes and brands and stuff that hadn't even been around long. So Jam would go on to explain that he did a whole bunch of time for attempted murder. He then moved on and explained a few things about Booney Mo, okay, a very well-known senior person in OTF. He identified him from a mugshot. Jam said that he met Booney Mo in 2005, 2006 when he was very young. He said that Booney wasn't a BD but actually a Black Peace Stone, and he was a gang leader in the Peace Stones. He explained that Booney and Durk were close, and Booney and Dee Dee were close, and they were all locked in with each other, and they were all like brothers to Lil Durk. He explained that he was locked up for an attempted murder that was related to Booney Mo's block, and he kept in touch with other members of the gangs while he was locked up, and he basically wanted to keep his ear to the streets and keep informed about things like who got killed, who got locked up, who was touching down on the yard, where ops were being located, which ops might touch down at the jail. And he said that he knew King Von a little bit. He said that he knew he was an OTF member and an O-Block member. He identified O-Block, aka Parkway Gardens, from a picture. He explained that O-Block is also a clique within the Black Disciples, and he explained that he knew Von before his attempted murder case, and that he knew who Von was due to his sister. And the feds kind of made a little bit of a comment. They were like, you was trying to talk to King Von's sister, and he sort of like, was like, yeah. Sounded like Jam was trying to rizz up King Von's sister when they were younger. But anyway, basically, Jam said when he went to jail, Von was just a shorty from O-Block. He wasn't known as this big factor, this big demon, all of this stuff. He said while he was in jail for 12 years, it was 12 years, he reconnected with King Von. He hung out with a guy that was in a different gang called Vonnie in jail. And basically, apparently, King Von wanted to talk to Jam on the phone. He was always on the phone with Vonnie. And at some point, he wanted to put King Von on, Vonnie wanted to put King Von on the phone with Jam. Now later on he found out that King Von had built up a very big reputation in O-Block, but Jam said he was never close with King Von. They spoke, like, it sounded like they had one conversation or maybe like a few little conversations, but he didn't really get to know Von like that. He just sounded like Vonnie put him on the phone with him and he didn't really know a lot about him, and he found out about him later. But he said he did stay in touch with Lil Durk because they were Lamron 300. He said Durk was one of the guys. That was his homeboy. He said Durk made song for the parties. He didn't hang on the block every day. He said Durk wasn't necessarily in Jam's immediate circle. He first spoke to Durk in jail around 2012, 2013. Sorry, so they'd met previously, but when he was actually in jail, it was like 2012, 2013 that Durk actually had conversation with Jam. Durk said that he randomly, out of the blue, gave $1,000 to Jam's attorney. He said he never asked him for this. He was surprised. It caught him off guard. He said that he then found out that Durk was writing songs about Jam's murders, and that was objected to, and that was kind of like, that was sustained, so that wasn't allowed to be kept in there. But basically, Jam said they begun communicating a lot as time went on. They're saying that Durk put money on Jam's books. Sometimes it started with $50 to $100, then a couple $100, then it was getting up to $1,000. He was slowly putting money on his books, and Jam explained that, you know, money goes further in jail. Stuff is cheap, so, you know, a couple $100 or $1,000 actually went a long way for him, and that really made a difference to his life. He went on to explain that Durk had his guy Jason, who worked for him, send the money for him. It came from Durk, but Jason was the one initiating it. He said he knew this because he had Western Union slips and it would have the person that sent the money's name on it. He said as time went on, he said he noticed a few people had started rapping the line "Free Jam out that jam." He said that an older guy apparently played him a song a couple of times that shouted "Jam out." He was thinking, oh, that's, you know, people shouting me out. He said he kind of thought it was just because his name was Jam and it rhymed, and like people just thought it was a slick bar. Then they said, do you know the song Back Again? And then they played it. They just played Durk's verse, but obviously we heard them lyrics. Jam, get out that jam. I gave him 50 and got ask again. He was catching murders way back when, but way back then, that's when the max was in. And then he basically said the song is referring to me. Durk did give me $50,000 cash when I got out. The song refers to catching a murder. Now, the song was actually released, I believe, before Jam got out of jail, but he basically said that that's what went down. He said that he said my name. He said that I used a Mac. I was known to carry a Mac. I used one of my attempted murder charge, and I did other things with it. And he basically said Dirk would often pick up the phone to him while he was in jail. And he finally got out in February 2022. He said that Dirk and Jason had bought Jam a bunch of clothes because they spoke on the phone. And he basically said, I'm coming home to nothing. I ain't even got any clothes. Dirk said, call Jason, tell him your size, and he'll get you some clothes. And he bought him a whole bunch of designer clothes for him to get out. Said he met Dirk and the OTF guys outside of prison. There was an objection to mentioning OTF, and that was sustained. So then they had to rephrase it and say, oh, you met Dirk and OTF members outside prison. There was pictures. Jason was pictured with a large photo that was framed of Von. There was photos that was taken of Jam with the group when they met. They showed a picture of them all together. He said he'd only been out a week or so. He'd met up with all these OTF members in Detroit. Apparently a driver took him all the way there from Chicago. And the other people were in the picture. It was Boogie, Wop, Dee, Twin, and Jam, and Asa Houston, who is Boogie. They were all together. He confirmed that Asa Houston was the driver on the Lil Pab murder in the Infinity. He was a driver in the Lil Pab murder. He was a GD. He'd apparently grown up around the ways, basically in an area where they had a lot of mixtures of BDs and GDs, but he was OTF too, and it was his connection to Lil Durk's brother D-Thang that allowed him to kind of slide with the BDs, even though he was GD. So it would be pictures of them together inside of a nightclub. We saw Jam with Durk, Duty Low. He identified Duty Low, and he said that he basically met Duty Low kind of through Durk and them. So yeah, that was interesting. So from there, they would show more pictures. They would show a picture with Dirk and all the guys in the club. We would see Vonnie on the far left of the picture. They would talk about when they kind of first all kind of met. So apparently Vonnie was the one that was always collecting Dirk's cash. When Dirk was playing shows, Vonnie was the one collecting big bags of cash. He was going to the shows, he was talking to the promoters, he was getting the bags of money and giving it to Dirk or Blood. He said that one of the first times that he kind of ran into him, he was out and Vonnie basically bought 2 big bags of cash to Dirk that he was being paid for the show. He said that was the first time he saw Dirk. He saw Vonnie, and he was Dirk's money man, and he saw Dirk's money, and he basically explained that he didn't know Vonnie's real name. He just called him Cuz back then, and basically everyone in OTF called Dirk Blood. He basically would explain that Vonnie was handling Dirk's money, and he handed out guns to everybody every time wherever they traveled, Vonnie was the one handing out guns to everybody and also securing cars. Every state they went to, Dirk apparently told Vonnie to get Jam a gun. They said that he knew that he will use it to protect Dirk. So apparently when they were in Miami, basically there was one guy around them that was kind of all jittery around Jam. It was one of Tory Lanez artists. And apparently Jam said after they left, Dirk basically said, hey, like, I'm going to start robbing these guys. I see his chain. He's getting some money. I'm ready to start robbing these fools. And apparently, Dirk kind of encouraged it. Dirk's response, according to Jam, was, that's the Jam I've been waiting on. Now, in the midst of all of this, okay, there was like a little sidebar. The judge came back and basically said, we're going to strike that from the record, okay, about Dirk sort of, condoning what Jam was offering about robbing somebody, and we later heard that Brian Steele wanted a mistrial over that. And the judge was like, bro, ain't no way you're going to mistrial over that. I've been very fair to have that stricken from the record. But anyway, after that, all right, it was said that Vonnie was known for providing hot, stolen cars, sliders. Jam basically explained that slider in Chicago slang is to commit a shooting or a murder, or pulling up on ops. He explained that hot cars are basically stolen cars. He explained that Dirk actually talked to Jam at a studio, and there were kind of multiple people around, and they had a conversation where Dirk had been talking to Jam about things going on in OTF. Apparently, Dirk had said that he was mad that people weren't sliding for Von. He apparently said that people were acting Hollywood in OTF, and they said that all Jam and Dirk usually talked about... this kind of didn't make sense. I don't know if this was wrong. But he said that while Dirk and Jam were in custody, apparently they were in custody at some point together, they said that all they talked about was music. I don't know if I wrote that down wrong, but I thought I heard them say all Dirk and Jam talked about in custody was music. But it was kind of random. That comment felt a little bit out of place. So if I've written that down wrong, we'll see in the transcripts when that comes out, I'm sure. But basically, there was a sidebar. We ended up coming back. And Jam talked about Slide for Von. He said that he knew Slide for Von and what that meant. It meant to do something for Von being killed. They basically explained that he spoke to Dirk about it. They said that Dirk hates the Slide for Von comments. He hated going online, and apparently the comments were getting to him. Dirk apparently spoke to Jam about Quando Rondo at a studio in Atlanta about a month after Jam got out of jail. Dirk basically was present with a number of other people, including DD, Doody Low, Wook, and Twin, and Jam, and there might have been one or two other people there that I didn't quite catch. But anyway, apparently DURK talked about 6ix9ine trolling him about Slide for Von to Jam directly. He said that he was mad about people not doing what they rap about, and he said if MFs catch Quando or Tim, they gonna be straight, you ain't got to worry about nothing. Catch him and kill him, basically, is what he was inferring. People nodded their heads, and apparently somebody in the room said, oh, what, we talking like 500k to a mil, half a ticket to a mil? Jam couldn't remember who said that, but DURK basically said in response to that, whatever, MF's gonna be straight, they won't have to worry about nothing. All right. If that was the case and Jam got $1 million for this, we might be in a different situation. But anyway, apparently DURK basically felt that FaceTime was like the best way to communicate. He felt that the FBI can't listen to FaceTime, so he often did kind of FaceTime calls and FaceTime audios and things like that. And basically, they said that Booney Mo and DD would always speak on FaceTime. He explained that DURK was frustrated by the Slide for Von comments and all of the trolling, and they showed that lyric where DURK said, they be on my page like Slide for Von. I know they trolling me. Got it back in blood. That's what it is. Like that. Got it back in blood. That's how it's supposed to be. Basically, don't talk about it. That's how it's supposed to be. I couldn't write all that lyric down, but it's a famous lyric. And basically, he explained that get it back in blood. This is revenge. People bleed when they get shot. People bleed when they get shot. So get it back in blood is basically to get revenge, to shoot people in retaliation. And basically, after that, they said, look, you don't know how it's supposed to be. That's what it was. It says, I got it back in blood, but you don't know that's how it's supposed to be. Jam said, well, yeah, basically explaining what we're doing it back to them. It's part of the game. You know, that's the game that we live by. You get it back in blood, we slide, we get back. And that Jam kind of always traveled with DURK in and out of state. It was kind of his muscle. And all the flights were arranged through DURK's employee, Jason. So after that, okay, there would basically be kind of a long exhibit put forward, and there was a bunch of boring stuff. We went over the flights again, and look, we've heard about the flights a million times, all right? But basically, there were a few more texts that were shown of Jam confirming with Jason that he booked flights. But what was interesting is Jam apparently would text Jason. Basically, DURK authorized any flight that Jam was put on, and Jam didn't like Jason making a booking without confirming it with DURK because it was DURK's money. And Jam would often text Jason and say, hey, did DURK say anything about the flights that I'm supposed to be on? And basically he said that the process was Jam would ask DURK if he could be on the flight, and then DURK would tell Jason, and Jason would basically follow up. And Jason wouldn't just book him flights without checking in with me. He said, I always need to tell Jason if DURK asked me to be on a flight, and then it would basically get handled that way. They wouldn't just book Jam on some shit that he didn't know about or that he wasn't privy to. So Jam basically had sent one text to Jason saying, hey, gang, I told Blood I need a flight to Atlanta. He told me, let you know. And then he followed up, did you holler at Blood? Jason had said for when, and basically he flew multiple times with DURK's authorization between February and August 2022. And then in August 2022, we got to talking about the period before the murder, and this is where things got absolutely insane. So the prosecution said, how did you get involved with the murder? They said Booney Mo, but really he said Booney and them called me. He said Nem is Chicago slang for Nem. He said, I was dropping my son off to soccer practice. I got the call from Booney Mo, and that same day I flew to San Diego. Booney said that he couldn't go on a hit himself because of his parole officer. He said when he spoke to Booney Mo on the phone about suddenly having to get on this trip, he could hear DURK's voice, but it wasn't a three-way call. He had DURK's voice on a separate phone. He said, Booney said, Blood, you there on the other line? Basically confirming that DURK was on this three-way call. He said that everybody had multiple phones in the crew, DURK, Booney, everyone. Booney basically said that Threat Nem weren't answering the calls, so they reached out to Jam to see if they could get DD on the phone. That's Threat Nem. And it sounds like not everyone was always picking up the phone immediately. But he said that they didn't give him any info about the trip. Jam said, I could tell something was going on because it was all rushed. And Jam wanted to know what was going on, so he called Lil Durk twice. But Durk didn't answer, and Booney called Jam back, and he said, yo, Durk doesn't want no one calling his phone who's coming to LA. He doesn't want no contact with anyone that's going to LA. Now, that's fucking dumb, right? Because it's like he's already tried to call you twice. But anyway, it don't really matter. But like Durk must have thought he was some mastermind criminal, but like he really wasn't that smart. So after that, Booney said call Jason to book the flights. Jam called DD. They called DD, Boogie, his cousin Chris, who agreed to come, and then he said he'd lost his ID. That was William Malcolm. I'm not gonna lie, he was lucky that he didn't get on that flight. Oh my god, it's been a long day. Anyway, basically, Boogie, aka Boogie and Asa Houston, Boogie. Asa Houston, all right, aka Boogie. They basically said that Jam said he was his rappy. That's like his homie that he's with all the time. So Jam sent all of the flight info over to Jason, and we did see those previously. We're seeing flights day in, day out, flights. The prosecution showed the messages of Jam sending the names to Jason, even IDs in some instances, and they basically said. Apparently, Jam was told, Blood don't want you to fly to LA. Jam got word that Dee Dee was coming, and they all went to the airport and got on the flight. Jam confirmed after being shown the picture of him at San Diego airport. He said, that's me and that's me and Boogie pulling up. I'm not sure what the time was. And obviously, Dee Dee was on the same flight, but he didn't come out at the same time of the airport. And then there was a picture of Jam getting in a black truck at San Diego airport. Jam said something funny. He said, we didn't take no orders from Vonnie. He's a nobody, all right? He just gives us stuff. He don't tell us what to do. And then basically what it sounds like is that Boogie and Jam, they left San Diego airport and went to a local Hooters. And that's when they spoke to Duty Low. And it was basically confirmed at this point that Duty Low was co-conspirator 4. He was the one that gave the location to Quando Rondo. Some people are putting it out there that it was Booney Mo. That's not what I heard in the courtroom, but hey, who knows? I could be getting screamed at by Dirk's team tomorrow about that. But I'm just going by my notes and what they said. Basically, apparently Duty Low, and it's crazy that his last name is Low. It's not his real last name, but Low. Bro, he the one giving the low, allegedly. He apparently let Jam and them know that somebody at a weed dispensary that Quando was going to buy some weed from had basically told them, and the plan was to catch Quando and kill him and use this kind of weed purchase thing as a way of kind of, getting the drop on him. They said previously they'd got some information about where Quando was from, but it was unsuccessful. They weren't basically able to kill him like they had hoped to. Now, this was where the testimony got insane. And shout out to Duty Low. I've got no problems with Duty Low. Jam doing a lot of telling on Duty Low. That's all I know. Okay. Basically, Duty Low got on FaceTime with Jam and Boogie while they were in Hooters. They said they FaceTimed Jam and Aza, and basically they said Duty knows where Quando is going to be while he's staying in LA, knows his flight info. Duty was in tune with the dude that was supposed to sell Quando weed, and somebody gave the location to Duty where Quando was staying. Jam said, it's not something I wanted to do, but I thought, damn, I'm here now. It's basically been dropped on him that he's got to do this murder in California. He said, I can't get away, so I just went along with the plan. He said, where I'm from, you don't stop nobody killing somebody. That's what gets you killed. He said, they will get mad and think you're the police. He explained that he didn't consider the Quando situation his beef. He said it was some rap stuff that had something to do with NBA Youngboy. He said, I'm used to Chicago beef. All of that had nothing to do with me. He said he wasn't comfortable doing a hit in LA because he's not from there. He said if it went wrong, I got in a high-speed chase, I got hurt, I wouldn't know where to go. He said, I've been in high-speed chases in Chicago and I know the way. It helps. He explained, look, King Von got into it with NBA Youngboy. It didn't even have nothing to do with Von. Von was just riding for his homie and basically, took off on Quando and just created all this situation. It was none of their business. And he said, I didn't feel like I should have slid for Von. Von wasn't even from my block. He wasn't my homie. We didn't kick it. I didn't love him. But he said, but me and Boogie basically, once Duty Low told us we were here to kill Quando, he said, we just looked at each other and said, after Duty told them that they were in California to kill Quando. So basically, Boogie would then be joined by Dee Dee, Flocker, aka Jones, and the CVL shorty, which obviously David Lindsay, who's in the courtroom, but Jam kept saying I only know him as just a CVL shorty. And they showed the picture of Flocker. He explained that he met him in juvie. They used to fight together. He said we used to beat people's ass together. He kind of laughed when he said that, and he said, "Oh, I'm sorry." I said to the judge, "I'm sorry." He said, when I came back from prison, I used to see Flocker on Dee Dee's block. We never really texted much or called before the shooting, but he was aware who he was. He said he had no idea who Lindsay was or the CVL shorty. He said he got out of prison and hung out with OTF. I never really saw them. He said Flocker knew Dee Dee, but I didn't really know what he had going on. And he said they got a Sprinter bus for us from San Diego. Jam, Boogie, Dee Dee, Flocker, and the CVL shorty Lindsay. They all got in there, and they said they might have gone from Hooters to the airport. He was sort of a little bit misremembering, but he was basically saying, I think we went back from Hooters to the airport and then got in the Sprinter with everybody else who landed on the later flight. And then they all got in a Sprinter van and then went from San Diego to LA. He explained that the Sprinter had kind of a partition, so you couldn't really talk to the driver. It wasn't that kind of situation. And basically, in addition to all that, he basically was shown a picture, and he said, I'm not sure if that's the exact van, but it looks similar. And so basically, he said that Dee was on his phone in the Sprinter, and he turned the camera to Flocker and the CVL shorty, Lindsay, and basically said, hey, I got the Navy SEALs here. He either said, here go the Navy SEALs, or you see the Navy SEALs. He kind of wasn't sure which one he said. And on the other end of that FaceTime was allegedly Lil Durk, right? He said that he heard Durk's voice, all right? And he said that Navy SEALs are hitters. They're military. They're people who go on missions and kill people, right? That's what Navy SEALs meant in that context. And he said, I saw Durk. He said that Durk was basically put face-to-face with Jam on the FaceTime. And apparently Durk said to Jam, hey, go crazy. And then Jam slammed the rakes, did the GDK hand sign, and basically asked where Durk was. Durk said he was at the studio. And he said, I knew that he was at the studio because I've been to that studio before. And then Durk and Dee continued talking on FaceTime. Now, after that, the Sprinter stopped. Apparently, they were up a mountain super high up, and they could kind of see the lights off in the distance above LA. And all the members got off. They stretched out. Somebody tried to take a picture, but it was too dark. Jam tried to take a video, but it was too dark. And you're thinking, bro, you guys are really trying to take videos on your Sprinter break? That's insane. So from there, they went to Target or Walmart. He wasn't sure which one, but like a large supermarket. And they basically stopped there to buy hoodies and gloves. They basically were trying to disguise themselves. And like nobody had brought hoodies and gloves with them, so they had to stop and buy them. So they got back on the Sprinter bus and eventually got to LA. Now they pulled up like a car lot that was apparently off a busy street. And then Vonnie got on the party bus, right? The Hitman bus, the Sprinter. He said, what's up? And then he stepped off to talk to Dee. And then he came back, and apparently Vonnie said, I got some bad news. I only got 3 guns. All right. And I don't want to get anything wrong here. So look, I'm just going to tell you what I wrote in my notes. If it was slightly off, I apologize, but I'm thinking it's close enough. He basically said that this was the first time that he had seen Vonnie in this trip, and everyone said, what's up? Jam shook Vonnie's hand. And then Vonnie came back with Dee. He said the bad news, only got 3 guns. And then Jam says he remembers he gave out some guns, right? He had 2 Glocks with extendos, and he said that they were hanging out one of their pockets of their hoodie. He couldn't remember who. But they had extended clips. He said he gave a Glock to David Lindsay, and Flocker, Asa, got given... is that right? Hang on a sec. My bad. Flocker being Keith Jones. They basically gave another Glock to Flocker. That was the Glock with the switch on it. And then Dee was holding a Beretta in his hand. And apparently he said, I'm rusty. It's been a while. And then handed the Beretta to Jam. So it was basically these guns being handed out determined who was a shooter from that moment on. And it was never questioned. Jam made it clear that a switch is what makes a Glock fully automatic. They're saying that Flocker, aka Keith Jones, had the switch. Yeah, Flocker was the one with the switch. That was confirmed. And then they basically said someone was delivering a 4-door car. It was white with tinted windows. This was the slider for the murder, the Infinity. And he said that the person that dropped it off, he didn't know who they were, but they wiped off the door handle with their sleeve, got paid, and then left. Jam, Flocker, Boogie, and the CVL Shorty basically all got into their cars, got into that Infinity, and then Vonnie and Dee got in the BMW, and everybody left. And where did they go? Did they go to their own hotel? No, they didn't. Allegedly, they went to the hotel that they knew Quando was staying in. They immediately went to Quando's hotel, and they basically saying that the shooters in the Infinity followed Vonnie in the BMW to a side block. Jam said he got out the car with Flocker and Dee to basically look around the hotel, see the ins and outs. They parked kind of away from it. He couldn't say exactly where. But then he said they swapped over. Jam then got in the car with Dee and Vonnie in the BMW, and the rest of them got in the Infinity. And they basically were scoping the scene out. So during this time, allegedly, according to Jam, Doody Low called them on FaceTime and basically says that the weed guy has Quando's location and has texted Quando saying that he's close, and he's told Quando Rondo he's like only a few minutes away. And Doody basically, allegedly the quote was, Doody said, I talked to the weed guy who's got Quando's low. He told me to tell Quando he's almost there to deliver. Jam basically said this was all a trick to get Quando downstairs. Doody said that the dude wasn't really coming with any weed. It was a trick. And that's where we're going to get them, where we're going to kill them. That was crazy. I'm not going to lie. That was crazy. So they got up the video outside the hotel and they showed the cars. They got Jam to identify the slider, the BMW, both parked outside. He said, I remember this because we were on opposite sides of the street. I remember it well. I was in the BMW with Dee and Cuz. And then basically Jam went on to say that we sat for a minute looking through glass. We were kind of looking through to the lobby. Then we went back to a side block. We were going to tell the the other car to basically pull up and get busy when Quando came out. They knew that Quando was wearing a camo shiesty mask. Somebody had a camo Bape hoodie on. They said Quando looked like he was smoking a cigarette outside, and at one point they saw the light bounce off his diamond grill. And he basically said they were about to slide and kill Quando Rondo at the hotel, but then cops were riding past. He said damn near every minute a police car drove past. LAPD was everywhere. He said they decided it was too hot to do the murder at that point. All right. And he basically said Quando was wearing a poo shiesty ski mask. All right. He explained what that was. Brian Steele objected to loads of stuff along the way, and the judge just kept on overruling. Bro, let him talk. So apparently Didi was in the back and he took the Beretta from Jam, and apparently he wound down the window, held the gun up, pointed it right at Quando, and he said, I could get him right now. It would be easy. That was crazy, but you didn't do it. All right. So that is just insane. That was like a movie. These guys are thinking this is a real life movie. So after that, they called off that hit. They said that the police were making it too hot and risky. Jam explained that hot is, you know, when the police are onto an area. They said a person can be hot, a block can be hot, a situation can be hot. The situation was hot. They went back to the hotel. Both of the cars went together. And they were outside Quando's hotel. They'd been communicating on their phones. Sounded like there was FaceTime, but he said he didn't know that the two cars might have been communicating on regular calls, possibly FaceTime. And they said that Vonnie was taking them to the hotel. It was the same hotel that everybody that goes to Disneyland stays at. After that, Vonnie did all of the checking in when they got to that hotel. Jam told Vonnie that he needed some weed, and Vonnie left to get some, and he came back with it. They were staying in a first level room that had a sliding door that went straight out to the parking lot. So Jam basically went out and smoked a little something with Flocker. He talked on the phone, then he went to sleep, and they planned on catching Quando the next day. So we went away, all right? We came back after a little break, and that was kind of the end of the testimony for the day. But what was interesting is that final part. DURK's lawyers made a motion for a mistrial. The judge was like, that Tory Lane's comment isn't enough for a mistrial. We're striking it from the record. But like, he basically gave a bunch of points as to why that was not sufficient for a mistrial. And we know that Brian Steele loves to ask for a mistrial. He did that a lot in the Young Thug trial. And then Didi's lawyer basically said an absolute load of nonsense. He said, this is death by 1,000 cuts. At a certain point, it becomes too much. Yeah, no shit. The evidence is overwhelming. He said we didn't have there were certain bits of evidence that we didn't have, exhibits that we didn't have. He basically was saying that they never said that they would show the Didi Murder Man video in front of the witness. And this guy, oh my god, Didi's lawyer, I'm sorry, but he's just talking a lot of nonsense at certain points. Sometimes he does it really good, and then other times it's like, bro, you're slipping. He said, Didi wasn't referring to himself as a murder man. He was referring to another guy that was there called Murder Man. He said, I request a mistrial. The judge flat out denied straight away. And the prosecution clapped back. They said, they didn't say bro. The prosecution responded. They said, he is lying. That's not what he said. The comment under the video said, Murder Man. And then Vonnie said, they saying I'm a murder man for sure that. And saying we didn't give a transcript because there was a lot of slang and things. We didn't want to try and tilt things. We just wanted to let the jury make their mind up of what they heard. And the judge said, look, I accept what the government says. We're not having this nonsense, right? And I was thinking, bro, we all heard Didi plain as day say that, yeah, they say I'm a murder man. Yeah, true that. The idea that it's like, they were talking about someone else that was a murder man. No, absolute cap. All right. Absolute cap. So it sounded like there were actually going to be some conversations that would be going on behind the scenes related to co-conspirator 6, who I believe was THF Bezu. And I think it sounds like they're worried about Jam or other witnesses telling the court things that Bezu said, because Bezu is no longer alive. Also, at the end, I would say that DURK kind of put on, once sort of everything was wrapped up, DURK put on a big fake smile like he's done a few times, but Brian still looked pissed. He looked livid. He looked really angry. So look, no disrespect. I do think that they had a bad day in court. Jam's testimony was overwhelming. We haven't even got to the full breakdown of exactly how the murder went down. I'm sure that's going to come tomorrow. But let's see how Brian Steele plays Jam. When Brian Steele gets to cross-examine Jam, is he going to go out like YSL Woody? Or is he going to go out like Sammy the Bull? We don't know. But I think if anybody's going to do a good job of that, it's Brian Steele. He did do very good cross-examination earlier in the day. I just haven't got time to talk about it right now, to be honest. I really want to just go to bed. And I don't think you guys are even that interested in it, perhaps. I don't know. But anyway, I will let you guys know when I hear more. That was all of Jam's testimony, all of my notes on it. If I got anything wrong, I apologize. I am only human. People are acting like I'm this superhuman that has got to somehow, get absolutely everything right all the time. If I get something wrong, I'll correct the record. I feel like people did me completely unfairly today, talking about, you got something wrong. Well, the prosecution, sounds like the prosecution got something wrong, and I said what the prosecution said, and then Dee Dee's lawyer went and corrected the record for an hour, and I immediately said exactly what Dee Dee's lawyer had said, and that it was compelling. People thinking I don't like Dee Dee's lawyer, but I was very compelled. The only criticism I had of Dee Dee's lawyer yesterday is I felt like he labored the point a bit too much when he had made it very clear that his client hadn't sent the DM. But nobody likes to read. Nobody likes to read all the tweets. They like to just go by the one headline and not read the follow-up, not follow up with what's going on. And I'm honestly disgusted that people from DURK's team screamed in my face outside the courtroom. It was very unprofessional, very emotional. I don't think there's any place for that sort of attitude in this professional environment. And I really just don't want to talk to them anymore. I thought we had a good relationship. That's definitely not the case. And nobody is going to bully me into not speaking the truth about what's going on in the courtroom. You got people lying on me, saying that I had Meta glasses on when I obviously didn't. These aren't Meta glasses. There's nothing in these glasses. Same glasses I've been wearing for 4 years. All right. I don't do that type of content. I don't do Meta glasses. That's not what was going on. All right. I had detectives analyze my glasses and make sure they weren't Meta glasses. And it's just a disgrace. When screaming at me in the hallway didn't work, I guess somebody resorted to telling lies about me. And it's just so ironic that you guys are all just so salty about, you know, Jam having this testimony and absolutely frying DURK, that you guys are going to snitch on me. Like, I don't know who told the court bailiffs or whatever they're called that I was wearing Meta glasses and live streaming, but it was absolutely false. I have seen that there is an image going around that was apparently taken in the overflow room. I don't condone that. I'm not going to post it. I'm not going to react to it. I think it's disgraceful. I think it ruins it for all of the good, honest people that came down there that wanted to get in the courtroom and follow these public proceedings because it's their right as Americans for justice to play out in public, for things to be handled properly. And so I don't condone that. Anybody that is trying to film in the courtroom is a disgrace. They should be removed. They should be prosecuted. You can call me the feds all you want, but basically the whole point is the public are allowed to come to this. You're not allowed your phone. You're allowed to write notes, and you're allowed to let people know what's going on. And it's ironic, right? Because if they were letting cameras in the courtroom, you wouldn't need like someone like me reporting on this. The judge has really given me an alley-oop, and a lot of people are upset that I'm kind of, you know, one of the most prominent people covering this, and I'm completely unbiased. People say I'm biased towards DURK. It's not the case. Anyway, if you want to get kind of, you know, a fake version of what's going on in the courtroom that spins everything to DURK's favor, you can go to any of the other platforms that are putting that stuff out there. You know, if that's how you, if you want your news kind of sanitized and spun to a you know, preconceived notion that you've got, you know, be my guest. That's your thing. Do it. I'm just going to keep being honest. Today was a bad day for DURK. If Brian still gets up there and whoops OTF Jam, that's going to be a good day for DURK, and I'll let you guys know. I'll be talking W's for DURK. I don't think the mob outside court are going to hear that. And I think the intimidation campaign that's been put on against me is pathetic. And I really can't wait to interview everybody when the verdict comes out. I'm not sure what's going to happen. Right now, it's looking bad for DURK. If it's a not guilty for DURK, then those people will be vindicated, and I'll be excited to hear what they have to say, because it will really be their day, and I'll be able to put my hands up and say, hey, man, you guys got what you want, and I'm reporting that. So, you know what I'm saying? Can we squash the beef? Or DURK will be getting guilty, and I think there will just be tears all round, and I really would like to hear what some of those people have to say. If the jury legitimately finds DURK guilty, I really don't care, honestly. I actually don't care if DURK wins this. To be honest, like, that gives me loads to talk about. There's going to be loads of things going on in hip-hop. If DURK loses, well, that's going to be something else to talk about. It's going to be a different angle. It's going to be, you know, a lot of follow-ups with people who had very strange opinions that might not add up later on down the line. But we'll see. I'll let you guys know, and I'll be honest with you all along the way. I'm not claiming to be perfect. I'm not claiming to be a robot that can get everything absolutely right or can reproduce the transcripts just based on my wrist work pause. That's not really how it works. But I'm just giving you the best information that I can get from the courtroom, and I'm letting you guys know that as soon as possible. So yeah, nobody's going to stop me. I said that I was going to cool off on doing the tweets for a little bit, purely because it's like people are seeing tweets and then they're having an emotional meltdown about it in front of the courthouse, and it's not appropriate. And like, the tweets ain't like that was just me basically realizing that I didn't have enough time to go outside and make a video, so I never use X. I was like, why don't I just put some of this info out here? But clearly that's getting under people's skin. But it doesn't do anything for, I like making videos. I'm a video maker, I'm a filmmaker, I'm a documentary maker, so that's really what I want to be doing. But if there's not enough time, hell, maybe I'll just go and use the restroom, just kick it, you know what I'm saying, check my text, all that kind of stuff. But anyway, can't be stopped, won't be stopped. I'll see you guys at the next one. I'm out for now. Peace. If you want uncut and extended versions of my videos, go to patreon.com/traplawross. Also, you can now watch my new drops on Spotify, so go search me there. Here's the video. For decades, Los Angeles has been notorious for its gangs. The original home to the Crips and Bloods that spread all over America. The gangsters that run the streets there have a dangerous level of power and influence, and the city's politics are not to be trifled with. When many celebrities and rappers come to Los Angeles, if they want to navigate the streets safely, they need to check in.
They have to have an experience before they realize, I should have checked in. You know what I mean? Or I should have called, or I should have been moving a certain way.
Checking in means to get in touch with a local gang, sometimes paying them for the privilege before arrival to ensure that you're safe in the streets there. It's part protection, part extortion, because for those who don't check in and pay the toll, they might just find themselves getting attacked by the very gangsters that they had a connection with. One of the most infamous advocates of checking in is Big U, real name Eugene Henley Jr. Oh my.
Bad, Chad, my bad. I don't know how I let it go into that Big U stuff. I'm out here trying to drop a short, that's why. Hold on, Chad. We can do another one, Chad. We can do another one. We can do another one, Chad. Let me see what we're gonna do. We just did this one. So, you think we should just go in a line backwards? But these are all short. Look at this. Oh, this one here in front of the court building. Yeah, let's just see what he's talking about. Might as well.
All right, so I'm here outside the courthouse. Not too many Free Dirk fans out here. I don't know. Maybe they was sleeping in today. No Free Dirk fans that I can see. But basically, there was a very crazy update, and what ended up happening was basically OTF Jam was back on the stand for the whole first half of the day. He ended up saying some pretty crazy comments, especially at the end. So I'm going to start at the end and work backwards. But they basically asked Jam. They said, "Why did you choose to cooperate? What was your motivation for this? Why did you turn on Lil Durk?" And he basically said, "I was mad at Lil Durk for putting me in that situation, and I'm still mad at him now." He said that Vonnie seemed like a goofy to me. I did something that I know I shouldn't have done, and the last time I did something with people that I didn't know, I did 12 years for it. I was doing this for Durk's selfish reasons. Maybe Cuz and Dee had a reason to do it. I didn't have no relationship with Von. I basically didn't know a whole bunch of these people that were sent on the hit. He basically said, "I feel like Durk sent me on selfish bullshit." He said, "I can't forget all the support that Durk gave me, especially when I was locked up. I can never forget that. I still got love for him." But he says, "Look, I know how it looks now, but I still got for him. Blood was there for me. I can't forget that, and I feel bad for telling, but at the same time, I still love him, but I don't respect him." He said that he could be killed for his testimony for cooperating, and then he also kind of pointed out a couple of things that really just motivated him, that why in this occasion did he decide to tell. He explained there were multiple reasons. He said he felt like the hit was done sloppy. It was done with people who shouldn't have been there. Obviously, he said that he thought Vonnie was a goofy, and he said there's a big difference between doing something to somebody that you don't like, but he said in this case he felt like Lil Pab ain't have nothing to do with it. He said he felt like an innocent man got killed, and it weighed heavily on him. He wanted to get it off his chest. He said he didn't think it was guaranteed that he would get caught, but he thought about it. He thought it was hot. He said, "Why do we go and do this in LA with all them rich people and actors around?" He said that was a bad place to do a hit. So the prosecutors actually asked him, they said, "Look, you testified and you pled guilty for your role in the LA shooting as well as 2 other murders. You know, what are you hoping for from this?" He said, "Well, I'm hoping for a reduction in my sentence," but he made it clear there's been no promises made. He's not getting out. I'm not going to lie to you. Jam having 3 bodies, he probably shouldn't be out here walking around straight after this. But he basically said he pled guilty with the 2 other murders, and you know, he just basically wanted to get it all off his chest. And he said it was weighing heavily on me what happened to Lil Pab, and he saw an opportunity and he took it. So it was some pretty crazy testimony. That last part when they kind of broke, you know, he said it straight out of his mouth. He said, "I still got love for Durk, and I can't forget what he did for me, but he put me in a bad situation with some goofies. It was selfish, and I'm not rocking with it." So that was pretty crazy, but there was a whole lot of other crazy testimony that Jam put across, and I'm going to tell you all about it in different videos. So stay tuned. I'll keep you guys updated on everything, and yeah, it's going to be a crazy day. I think he's going to be up there all day, maybe even into tomorrow. So we just got some crazy new information about how it went down when Jam got arrested and decided to start cooperating with the FBI. So apparently he was arrested in 2023 for something completely unrelated. He was pulled over in a car that apparently had a gun in it while he was still on parole from that attempted murder case that he just got out after serving 12 years on. And he basically said that at that point he decided to talk to the FBI. He wanted to get it off of his chest. The Lil Pab murder was weighing on him. He felt like Pab was an innocent man and that he'd been sent on a dummy mission with some goofies by Durk for selfish reasons. And he said he saw an opportunity to get out of the situation. What was very interesting is when he got arrested, he basically wrote a handwritten note to the FBI. So what he claimed is that he said that he was allowed to make a phone call. He said the official phone wasn't there, or it wasn't working. So they said, "Look, we'll let you make a supervised recorded call on your cell phone, but like that's what we're going to have to do. We'll allow you that." So he made a call, and then he told the cops, "Hey, can I have a bit of paper to write down a phone number?" They said, "Sure," but he didn't write down a phone number. He wrote down a handwritten note which said this exactly. It just said, "I know about murders. I don't want to talk on camera. I know a lot." So he gave that handwritten note to an arresting officer. That basically was then, you know, worked its way up the chain to the FBI, and the prosecutors asked him, they said, "Why didn't you want to be on camera?" Obviously, this is going to be a big controversial thing when it comes to Brian Steele. Obviously, he was absolutely clapping back. I believe it was yesterday, talking about why weren't all of these interviews recorded? You spoke to Jam 30, 40 times. You barely recorded any of those interviews. Well, this is kind of a slap in the face to Brian Steele, because Jam said specifically, I don't want to be on no camera, and they said, why didn't you want to be on no camera? Now, this is crazy, all right? He said, well, I didn't want to be on camera because a lot of people have been getting exposed on their body cams doing embarrassing shit. You know, they be getting exposed on social media for telling on the body cam, snitching, crying, which is obviously a reference to a very infamous Chicago video where, you know, one of the shorties from over there was kind of apparently caught on a case, and he was bawling out, crying to the cops. And there's been a lot of rumors about whether that case was connected to the Jam case, whether that kid that was crying in the body cam footage might have had a dirty gun that Jam had used in a different murder. So Jam made direct reference to that. As I would have said in my previous video, Jam made it clear. He said, look, he was mad at Lil Durk for putting him in that situation. Even though Durk did a lot for him, he basically said he's still mad at him. He put me in a situation with Goofies. He didn't trust Bonnie. He didn't know why he'd been put in that situation with him. And basically that's why he decided to make that decision and speak to the FBI. Who knows what sort of time he's going to get? I mean, allegedly, not even allegedly, he has admitted to 3 murders, and, you know, allegedly there's more. So he definitely getting some serious years. I can't imagine them just letting him go. But they made it very clear he's not been offered a deal. They've not promised him no time. He's not getting out of everything. He basically is leaving it in God's hands and cooperating. And he didn't say I cooperated to get out of time. He said I felt bad about this. It was weighing on my heart, and Pab was an innocent man. You might. So we just.
I was about to go to where's that?
Wow, I cannot believe what just happened inside the courthouse. This isn't even about Durk, this one's actually about me. There's been a very controversial post that has been going around. Everybody's very upset that I basically did a tweet about that post that Didi had reshared, right? The prosecution had worded it in a way that it sounded like Didi had posted it. And I posted that on Twitter. I came back and Didi's lawyer spent a whole hour breaking down in meticulous detail how this was a repost. It wasn't an original post. Didi hadn't typed the post. He had reposted it into a group chat. It was that post that said, at Rondo, where your pipe at gang. He had reposted it into a chat along with his own comment, basically saying he looking crazy, like he basically, it was he playing crazy, right? So as soon as I got out of court after hearing Didi's lawyer argue that point very, very well, maybe a little bit too well, maybe the point had already come home before, you know, he talks about it for a much longer time than he needed to talk about it, and I felt like he might have brought more attention to the fact that that was a bit of an unsavory thing to repost. I posted that. As soon as I got out, I said Didi's lawyer just clapped back. But for some reason, it seems like the people at the courthouse, the people that have been following this case, and Durk's team specifically, they're not reading everything. They're over here reading the transcripts, but they're not reading all of my tweets. So everybody was upset about the tweet that I posted when I got out the courtroom the first time. Nobody had talked about the second tweet where I said that Dee Dee's lawyer just clapped back, and I got confronted by Lil Durk's PR woman. She screamed in my face outside the courtroom, delete the tweet. I said, what do you mean? Like, what about Dee Dee's lawyer talking for an hour about, you know, basically making the point? I said, I came out the courtroom, I was given the impression that Dee Dee had posted it. Dee Dee's lawyer went back into the courtroom. He made it very clear. He made a very long, extended, maybe an overextended argument about why that wasn't the case. He got his point home. He got his point further than home, right? He got the point so far home that he might have, you know, left it on screen a little bit too long and made things look a little bit bad. Durk's PR person said, I'm not talking about that. We're not talking about that. So they're just ignoring the facts. They're pressing me over stuff that's like incomplete information. I'm just coming out the courtroom, giving you guys the updates as soon as I possibly can. Yes, sometimes the prosecution are going to say things that aren't true. Sometimes the defense are going to say things that aren't true. Brian Steele said several things that are absolutely false when he was doing cross-examination just now. He referred to King Von as K. Von Bennett numerous times. That's not his name. Is anyone going to call out Brian Steele for getting that wrong? No, of course they're not, right? He made a bunch of other mistakes. He said that Quando Rondo had crowned and anointed Lil Tim as King Tim after the killing of King Von. No, he didn't. It was a random other rapper from Savannah, Georgia that put that out after King Von died. And then he also said numerous times that King Von was murdered. It was not a murder. The prosecution made it very clear it was a self-defense killing. Yes, he was charged with murder, but it was not proven as a murder. So no one's going to talk about Brian Steele literally getting up in the courtroom and lying. People want to get onto me for making a tweet and then basically updating you when I heard from Dee Dee's lawyer. It's insane. All right, so a couple of really interesting things just came out of the courtroom, and it kind of relates to some of these alleged gang connections that have been brought up. So they kind of teased some of the things that it sounds like maybe OTF Jam or, you know, some of the other cooperating witnesses are going to say, and they basically hinted, we might be hearing some of that testimony today, but we basically heard an update that apparently one of those folks is going to call Dee Dee the leader of Tay-Town, not a shooter. There was someone that kind of inferred that he was a shooter, and basically they're saying no, they're going to claim that he is a leader of the Tay-Town set. Apparently, another participating witness that is cooperating with the government is basically going to say that DURK was mad at members of O Block for not protecting King Von at the time of the shooting, okay, which is interesting because that kind of is going to contradict these claims that apparently, you know, King Von had said to Vonnie before he passed away after getting shot, why didn't you protect me? Why did you let him shoot me like that? Now, what's crazy is apparently OTF Jam overheard a conversation with DURK, members of O Block, Dee Dee, and Booney Mo, basically saying that apparently DURK had actually paid for members of O Block to have an Airbnb in Atlanta, and he was mad that they didn't slide for Von when they were at that Airbnb in Atlanta. It's crazy. So another thing that was interesting, obviously we're hearing all this stuff about DURK said don't book no flights in my name, and they're trying to say, oh, you know, DURK didn't know what was going on, like them flights ain't have nothing to do with him, there wasn't more details. Now this wasn't connected to the murder of Lil Pab, but apparently there is text between DURK and that same guy who was ordering his flights, Jason, back in December the 3rd, 2020, after Von died, where DURK was saying they need flights blood. He's saying who? He's saying Dee Dee. He's saying Booney Mo. He's saying Christopher Wright. So another thing that came up was that they basically kind of went back and forth and showed some of the stuff that King Von was posting when he was still alive. Now, Von actually posted an Instagram of himself and Lil Durk when he was alive, and it had a pretty crazy caption. It said, if Smirk want an N-word dead, then an N-word dead on O, you know how I'm coming. If you got it, I got it. If I got it, you gave it to me. Durk's one of my top 5 people alive. I love you. Now look, that don't prove anything. King Von made that before he was even dead, but it just kind of like builds up this close relationship between, you know, Von and Durk, and the get back and the slide in and the footage of Von getting killed, which was obviously shown previously. Now, we then moved on. This detective gave a lot of information, but we then moved on to cross-examination. And look, I am a little bit upset. I'm a little bit salty that Brian Steele said a few things that I know not to be true from my research, but that said, I'll keep it real. Brian Steele did an amazing job, and he really, really grilled this detective. It kind of gives a bit of a stale taste in your mouth when it's like, damn, he really grilling them, but then he's saying a few things that aren't right. He's messing a few names up. He got King Von's name wrong numerous times. He called him K. Von Bennett numerous times, and it's just kind of like, bro, like, come on, man. But I don't think the judge knew. I don't think the judge worked it out. I don't think he cared. We're going to do a full update on everything that was going on with Brian Steele right after this video. I'll let you know what was going on. He did actually do a very good job, but he did make a few mistakes. There was a crazy moment in court today when they finally played Lil Durk's unreleased Redman music video. They didn't play the whole video, and they didn't even play the song, but they played the intro with sound. And I'm not gonna lie, it was looking like a great video. It was looking like a big budget video. They had an actor that looked just like Quando Rondo. He was dressed in the outfit that Lil Tim was wearing when King Von got killed. I believe the video was made by infamous video maker Jerry Production, who's produced a lot of videos for DURK as well as Von. I'm not gonna lie, the video looked fire. It looked big budget, but obviously what was bad was it showed Lil Durk sliding in the back of a van with what looked like a Mac, but like, you know, sort of like a mini machine gun type gun, pulling up on this Quando Rondo lookalike, shooting him dead in the street, shooting him on the ground, standing over him, pulling off his mask and revealing that it was Durk that did it. Now, I'm not going to lie, the video looked fire. I wish I could have watched the whole thing, but obviously it wasn't a great look for the jury. And what made it even worse is it had all this dramatic kind of movie-style score music in the background. And if I'm real with you, it really built up a vibe. It really built up this kind of terrifying murder, true crime vibe in the video that I'm sure Durk is probably regretting from when he made that video. But it was very interesting because Brian Steele kind of clapped back. He said that this video is art. He pointed out that Quando Rondo had also made a video where they depicted Durk getting shot and killed. It was interesting because they showed a screenshot of the Lil Durk lookalike in the video. That was shown by the prosecution. But weirdly, they didn't show the music video for that. So weirdly, the prosecution didn't actually bring up the video now because I kind of know a little bit too much about this case. I know that it's the song Soul Reaper, right? I got it for you there. I just looked it up and double checked. But it's the song Soul Reaper where they had a Lil Durk lookalike and they didn't even bring this up. I'm surprised they didn't bring this up, but Lil Pab, the actual victim, is in that video killing Lil Durk. They didn't bring that up. I'm surprised they didn't. But regardless of that, that was shown as part of when they showed the Quando Rondo interview with Angela Yee in the back of the Rolls Royce. And they pointed out he's in a Rolls Royce. Look at the headrest. They didn't say why, but they're obviously going to introduce the evidence later on that Durk had lyrics where he's talking about that Rolls better be bulletproof. We're going to shoot at the stars. But anyway, Brian Steele kind of brought forward a bunch of stuff to basically say, look, you didn't question Quando Rondo's art when he had a lookalike that, you know, a Durk lookalike that was killed in the Soul Reaper video. You're judging Durk's art. He said Jerry Productions, a very accomplished video maker. You know, Durk didn't necessarily have anything to do with this video. They said, you know, the video wasn't released. He didn't really land on any of those points, but I think what he was trying to infer was that Durk didn't know. You know, everybody knows that Durk was having these problems about, you know, what had happened with Von. There's a scene in the video where Durk's looking at his phone and you kind of see all these news articles about Von popping up. But I think what Brian Steele was trying to infer that, like, someone else, maybe Jerry Production, had come up with the concept of the video based on everything that was going on, and perhaps maybe Durk wasn't happy with the way he was depicted in that video and decided not to release it. But unfortunately, they got that video from someone in his team's phone and they were able to show that intro where he kills the Quando lookalike in the courtroom, and just the spooky music they added to it, I would say definitely made it worse. But Brian Steele did a great job of arguing against it, and I'm about to tell you everything about Brian Steele in another video. Okay, so there was some crazy evidence that was shared today. I'm going to be very careful about what I say. I don't want Durk's team to scream at me outside the courtroom telling me to delete everything like they did today. But look, I'm just going to be careful about what I say. They brought up some of these Duty Low messages. There were messages back and forth with Duty Low. Now, I want to just be very careful what I say. It seemed like they were inferring that Durk was kind of going back and forth in these messages, but I don't know if that can be 100% proven. They were saying that there were a lot of messages that were deleted. Durk's efforts to apparently delete his messages very regularly seemed like he was actually having some success with deleting these messages, okay? It seemed to suggest that Duty Low had gone back and forth with somebody that was saved as Slime Life Shorty. Now, I know Slime Life Shorty is someone in Atlanta who was brought up in, you know, the Young Thug situation, and there was even kind of a, you know, a whole thing where, you know, Young Thug had dropped that song, talk about Slime Life Shorty, you know, I hope you put down your 40, but it seemed like that was what Duty had Durk saved as, but I can't be 100% sure. But the context of the conversations seemed to have Duty kind of going back and forth with Durk. They basically seemingly had a bit of a celebration. So what was interesting, right, was apparently Duty Low had done a reaction, like a laughing reaction, to a message that said no, which was right after Quando Rondo was screaming on the street no over Lil Pab's body. Now, they had basically recovered that reaction, but what they didn't have was the original messages. So we don't know for sure, but it seemed like it would have been a reaction to Durk's message saying no, but we don't have that. And then basically we saw this back and forth with Duty Low, and basically before anyone says Duty Low's telling or he's cooperating or anything like that, the feds basically said that they had numerous warrants for numerous iCloud accounts with Duty Low. It was hot for Duty Low, and the feds were onto him, and that clearly they I don't know how they did it. I don't know if he even know they got it, but they got all of his iCloud info from his phone. But basically, they went back and forth. Duty Low had apparently said to this person that was saved in his phone, keep your head on, Slime. In the pain, I'm with you for life. This was the person said to Duty Low, keep your head on, Slime. I'm in this pain, I'm with you for life. I'm drilling about this shit. Duty Low said, I love you, Slime. They said, I love you back, Slat. It's up about this shit. After that, this person was messaging Duty Low saying, "Where you at? I'm at the crib." Duty Low saying, "Call me." And then that person that saved the Slime Life Shorty sends Duty Low Quando Rondo's number, and he says Quando's number. They said it's one of his phones. And then the next day, there's a message back and forth where that person that saved the Slime Life Shorty, that it seemed like it could have been DURK, but not 100% confirmed at this stage. They basically said, "I've got an N-word from Savannah who got dropped." Obviously, Savannah, Georgia is where Quando Rondo is from, drops his locations, and DURK says, "This is him, you want his number?" Duty Low says, "Yeah," and he sends the number. Now, obviously, it was made very clear nothing was necessarily slid about. They never tried to do a drive-by on Lil Tim or anything like that in Savannah, but obviously these messages were going back and forth, and it's not a great look. But look, I'll let you know more when I have more context. All right, so we just heard a couple of really interesting updates from the court about how DURK and them were treating OTF Jam. Now, obviously, they worked out that he was apparently getting ready to snitch. We've heard more about these messages. You know, they're basically saying Jam getting ready to snitch, clear as day. They were cutting him off. There was apparently a conversation we heard about previously where, you know, DURK and them had taken him into a bathroom stall at a music video shoot and said to him, "You making it hot, you catching bodies, you getting the feds on us, you need to chill out, you might need to leave town." And then there were a whole bunch of back and forth messages that we saw where Jam had apparently said, like, "Hey, why is everyone scared of me? Ever since that day, nobody want to be around me. What's going on?" Well, now we heard even more details from the conversation, and it seemed like DURK was kind of cooking Jam. This was a little bit more context they added. He said Jam just ready to snitch blood, clear as day on Lil Mo, and then he basically said, wait, what'd he say? He basically said something along the lines of like, "Blood not even down here, but he F with Lil Tay, he different." They said he pulling a GD move, so DURK acting like all the GDs are the ones who be telling. Obviously he's got a big gang war with the GDs, but they're not allowed to talk about that today. But then DURK went on to say he a real goofy. Now, DD then sent an image into the group chat, the OTF group chat, that was a screenshot of a chat that he'd had with Jam, or basically he had showed the screenshot of it, and he said, "Jam said, what's up? Is it fuck him? Let us know what it is. Jam want to talk to you. Stand on lawyer so he can be there on the 20th. So it sounded like they weren't sure if Jam was already telling. Jam was asking for a lawyer, asking if he was going to stand on it, saying Jam want to talk to you, all this kind of stuff. And then the prosecution revealed that at this point, apparently during this conversation, or basically on August the 24th, 2023, Jam was already in custody in Chicago. And then there was another reply, DURK saying about Jam. They said he going to tell soon. And then Didi replied he thinks he can break us down on Mom for real. And then apparently Didi had said in description of Jam, he a Alpo ass dude, obviously in reference to the infamous snitch over on the East Coast. And then somebody in the chat that was called Loyal basically said, beware of everyone, not just Jam. And then after that, there was some more back and forth where that person went on to say at this point, for real, weird ass people. And then after that, apparently Booney said that the feds had been going to the jails, talking to everybody that came in. They'd basically been hearing rumors that inside the jails, inside the prisons in Chicago, anyone that had anything to do with DURK, the cops were sitting them down and trying to talk to them. They're saying they're trying to sit everyone down and ask for the ABC. And that's when DURK said that line. He said, as long as we don't break, they can tell them whatever. So, yeah, I'm not going to lie. That was a pretty crazy exchange. So we finally saw Brian Steele cross-examine this kind of big detective. And look, Brian Steele put on a very, very good display. He grilled him about all the times that, these interviews were conducted. Loads of interviews were conducted. They weren't recorded. And look, I'll be real, Brian Steele told a couple of lies, made a couple of mistakes. He said that Quando Rondo was the one that crowned Lil Tim as King Tim after King Von died. That's not true. That was another rapper from Savannah, nothing to do with Quando Rondo. He was an associate, he was an affiliate, but as far as I'm aware, immediately after King Von died, Quando Rondo wasn't the one saying, free Lil Tim, hold up, wait, it's King Tim. He also referred to King Von as Kayvon Bennett numerous times, which I thought was just like, not really having the best grasp of the case. But at the end of the day, that's not really making a huge difference. And he also incorrectly pointed out that, he said, there was an argument about a celebrity boxing match. DURK was saying that he could box Quando Rondo for $20 million. That's not what was said. He said, I could box you for $20 million. This is my opinion. I think he was talking about Youngboy. I think he was sending a voice note to Youngboy, and he said, your homie Quando can die though. So how would he be talking about he can have a $20 million boxing match with Quando, but then also saying your homie Quando can die though? In my opinion, I think he was talking about Youngboy, and I think he misrepresented that evidence too, since we're all talking about people getting things wrong. Brian Steele made the point that you can actually download an app that kind of like automatically deletes all your messages, you know, within 30 days. They're saying, look, Dirk having his message deletion app on his phone, like if he was using other means to delete his messages, that doesn't necessarily prove guilt. He talked about OTF Jam having the Rats to Riches print on his pants. Weirdly, the detective said, oh, he thought it said Rags to Riches, which was different from what we heard from the other detective. But then Brian Steele basically said, well, look, rats are sometimes falsely identified, right? Brian Steele made a pretty smart move when he was asked about this message where Dirk had apparently said wait for the get back in response to stuff that he had been sent of people from Quando's side clowning him. And he basically made the point, he said, well, did you know that there was a song called Get Back? When he was inferring basically that like when Dirk said wait for the get back, he could have been referring to wait for me to drop my song that was called Get Back. I'm gonna lie, I thought that was genius. That was a really smart move. But obviously the crux of it was basically just attacking all of these interviews. Brian Steele said the agent attended 41 meetings with Jam that they were aware of. Apparently they did 10 meetings with Vonnie. The agent that was on the stand was there for 6 of those. And apparently the other witness, Jones, was interviewed 3 times when they were present. And they basically just kept going on saying, why didn't you do recordings? Dee Dee's lawyer took over. Their whole thing was basically like, why weren't all of these recorded? And I'm not going to lie, the detective did a good job of basically saying, well, we're not required to record all of them. It depends on the budget, depends on the schedule, depends on if we can get the equipment. But I think Brian Steele did an impeccable job of kind of, you know, putting some reasonable doubt forward and sort of pre-trashing these witnesses.
Okay. Stuck in a deep thought chat, my bad. Deep thought. Okay. Okay, now we going here.
All right, so I'm here outside the courthouse. Not too many Free Dirk fans out here. I don't know. Maybe they was sleeping in today. No Free Dirk fans that I can see. But basically, there was a very crazy update, and what ended up happening was basically OTF Jam was back on the stand for the whole first half of the day. He ended up saying some pretty crazy comments, especially at the end. So I'm going to start at the end and work backwards. But they basically asked Jam. They said, "Why did you choose to cooperate? What was your motivation for this? Why did you turn on Lil Durk?" And he basically said, "I was mad at Lil Durk for putting me in that situation, and I'm still mad at him now." He said
I don't figure road where the sun beats down. T-Row, L and Smack, they holding court in this groovy town. Talking about the internet street, west side bound. Rapping to the rhythm, hear that west coast sound. Yeah, back on fit, yeah, back on fit.
All right, so I'm here outside the courthouse. Not too many Free Dirk fans out here. I don't know. Maybe they was sleeping in.
Oh, she gonna get a might get a copyright for that dumbass. Oh my god. I do not own copyright to that music that just was playing. Yeah. Hopefully we be okay, man. Where Nancy Grace?
They got me feeling like I'm academics.
Brian Steele is on the stand. I can't wait to hear what people say about his all of his stuff, Because I do feel like, there's a little bit D-Rodding for Brian Steele. I think we've seen him, and by the way, maybe for good cause, because we've seen him do a really good job, not only in the case in YSL, with the Diddy case that he was also a part of. He did a really good job. So there's not much negative things to say about him, but I think that Jam gave a strong opening. I think Jam as a cooperator, yes, you're always going to have the fact that he is a murderer that you could use against him, the fact that he's testifying for a hope to reduce the sentence. But I feel like Jam gave a cohesive story. Why are you telling on your man now? Man, my man was sending me off on some goofy shit. He start devaluing me as a person when I thought he valued me a lot. How do we know you're not just saying this to save your own ass? Well, I confronted him. He changed the subject. Well, why would you get paid to go kill somebody for somebody who was a BD? I ain't no Vaughn like that. I was never out in the field with him. Okay, we got a couple more tweets. Here we go. Brian Steele says, man, you're one of the highest ranking members of the Black Disciples, aren't you? You're a minister, right? Ain't that dangerous? Jam says, nah, not every minister is dangerous. But Steele says, but you are dangerous, though. You're a dangerous man as a minister. Now, you know what I like about Brian Steele's technique? He'll kind of poach around, and then he always attacks. When he attacks, you're usually backpedaling, you're off balance, and he goes for the kill until the prosecutor does a bunch of sidebars, or the prosecution fucking tries to objection, or the judge steps in. Like, he's completely there to obliterate. He has a pit bull style a bit. He does have that pit bull style where when he sees blood, he's just waiting for blood to be in that water. He's going to attack. And you got to realize this is a different case than a sex case that was with Diddy, where, he had to kind of be a little bit cautious. He doesn't want to be like, bitch, stop acting like you wasn't with sucking that nigga dick. Like, you see, that would be sound insensitive. Got to tiptoe a bit, but here it's straight murder. He could get to it a little bit quicker. Jam says, I'm not banking on DURK to get a life sentence. Steele says, so you want to go home? No, he says, you want to go home, sir, right? Jam says, yeah, I do want a number. Number meaning that he wants a number in a sentence rather than life in prison. Okay, so life in prison, you'll never get out. If they tell him 20, if they tell him 10, they tell him 5, they tell him 30, at least there's a date on the calendar you get out. Steele says, you have a part. He said, you in part have accused DURK of these crimes, right? Jam says, I just told the truth about him. Steele says, the truth is decided by others, right? Right. Still, I gotta see how Steele's gonna try to crack this one. Pause, Jam met with that, he's a dumb nigga, but he met with the prosecutors 30 times. They got him trained. That's a strong line. They said, you have accused DURK of a crime. He could have said yes. You know what he said? I told the truth about that man. Shit like that, that hits. You could have just said yes. But him deciding to say, no, I told the truth. I think that will hit a little bit harder than just saying yes. We'll see. I still think Brian Steele is going to do his thing. Will he completely... I would imagine he's going to take 2 hours, 3 hours. Will he completely, by the end of his time, make us feel like, oh yeah, this is a garbage witness? Because that's what he made us feel like when he was examining people in the other cases. He literally took Woody, and well, obviously Woody was also helping the cause as well, but Woody was a non-factor after that. Woody was a non-factor. I don't know if you guys seen, Woody has made a couple of videos kind of chiming in on this. He's kind of chimed in on this. Here we go. Where is it? Yeah, Woody speaks on DURK. Yeah, what the fuck?
All
Where
right,
is
chat.
it?
I'm
Is
gonna
it
get
here?
up out of here, man.